All right, it's Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Adrian with you today, and the Gingerness Stakes have been cut in half this week because Owen is out. He's gone to Electric Picnic. We let him away, but he's been replaced by Mossy Quinn. Morning to you, Mossy.
Morning, Adrian. How are you?
I'm very good. It's All-Ireland final weekend, so we thought we might as well get you in, somebody with an expert in this field. I mean, as I said, the Gingerness Stakes are down, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say thankfully, and I didn't want to rub it in too early.
Unfortunately, I'm going to say. What sort of state you'd normally be in? There was, you've experience of playing at these finals and club and county. What sort of state on a Friday morning? At this point, I'm sure just wanted to get out on the pitch.
Getting out on the pitch, yeah. For me, it was like everyone has a different routine, but mine certainly would have been to try and keep things as normal as possible. So I probably would have worked on the Friday. Some people you could possibly take a few days off, or possibly a day off, certainly on the Friday, to get into it. But if the game is on the Sunday, I think you have enough time, and I think it's the waiting around and can often be the hardest part. And I think you just want to get to that Sunday meeting time where you're with the group and you're back within that kind of the squad environment. So Friday I would have worked. So again, I would have been trying to keep it as normal as possible, trying to keep the head down away from people. So
not
you're not
googling like Dublin and Tyrone sort of.
No. But like you'd certainly have a couple hours filled anyway in the morning, certainly to get you to after lunch, and then you try and get into and they might meet I'd imagine there'd be certainly one more squad get together probably tonight for most teams. So that you'd get together again. The longer you can be around, you probably meet some of the guys off the squad, possibly for a bit of lunch if there's guys who work close to you or live close to you and things like that. So I think when you're this close to the game, you want to be around guys you can actually have a proper conversation with, because otherwise you're meeting people and they're probably
on your guard.
Yeah, they mean well, but even family members and things like that, they're possibly asking, well, what's the team going? Like the Dublin team probably isn't named yet. Certainly, I don't know, in terms of being picked, the team probably don't even know it yet. So from that side of things, they're probably being asked questions. Well, how's he? Is Cian O'Sullivan fit? Right, all this type of stuff, and you'd rather not get into that. So you're kind of you're happy enough to.
Well, you have to bluff people, isn't it? Like
you do, and you don't want to, and particularly it does. It comes down to parents, to brothers, sisters, anything, and if you're in work or and some people lack the awareness, they'd still ask you for a ticket coming up to the game, or that type of way. Like whatever about the generic question of how you're feeling yourself, you can kind of try out an answer, but someone still asks you about tickets or what you think or what are you doing after the game or where are you going to be Sunday night. Like that's all stuff you just want to avoid.
But that getting your goat, like that sort of lack of awareness, I can imagine. A couple of days out from a game, you're playing in the game, somebody's left it to that point of the week, they're so concerned about getting a ticket. It
sometimes depends who it is. Like if it's someone who should know better, you can kind of sit there thinking to yourself, going, come on, you know not to ask me this type of question. Whereas sometimes if you meet someone in work who mightn't have a huge interest in GA or mightn't have an understanding of it, you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt now. But again, I think the fortunate thing for particularly the Dublin players in this instance is they're obviously, this is their fourth All-Ireland in a row, in terms of fourth All-Ireland final in a row, so they've massive experience. Even their families and friends and their environments usually around them would have experience of what the people are like, what the players are like. And I'd say for Tyrone players it's slightly different. I think Colm Kavanagh and Colm McCarron, who's not fit to tog out this weekend, are the only two from the Tyrone squad who have previous experience in an All-Ireland final at senior level. So for them this will probably be a different week, and it'll be interesting to see how they react to it.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the pieces I picked up in the papers today was talking about Colm and Sean, and they'll meet at some point over the next 48 hours, but it won't come up. They know each other enough to not discuss it, that there isn't going to be any sort of
and I think it's funny, like I think sometimes people outside of that environment they kind of struggle to think, surely when you meet you have to talk about it. And like if I came across some of the Dublin players now and like I know in the past, like even this time last year I might have met one or two of the lads in the week coming into the game, and it's funny, you talk about everything other than the game, and maybe when you've previously been in that, not to ask, not to put them in a situation where they have to bluff you, because you don't want to have to ask the question for them to think, well, I'm not going to tell him here. So but it is, I think obviously Sean and Colin both have been around long enough to know like what ground they can cover and what they can't, and I'd imagine some of the stuff will be generic enough.
Sean's covered enough ground anyway this summer, I think.
Exactly. He's put himself out there.
What was your stock response to the Friday afternoon? Have you got any tickets for the match?
I used to just laugh. I used to just pretend like it wasn't a serious question and just say you couldn't possibly, and I just laugh and say, oh yeah, no problem, yeah.
Inside you're like,
just leave it at that and just ask them how many they'd want, and do they want halfway line, and do they want Cusick up or lower, and see, and to be honest with you just kind of dismiss it. And I think when you can't even answer, like you don't take the question seriously,
We'd Kieran Carey on a few weeks ago, and he was saying that 85 pairs of tickets went through his hands in the 90s, whenever it was, for Limerick. 96, so 96, so and
that's the thing. I think you see now teams are obviously there's a lot more detail goes into the preparation, and everything is covered, and I think that's probably one of the things players will do, or certainly I would say you'd nearly recommend for them to be done, is to nearly have someone else look after the tickets for you.
Did I hear John Kiley talking about that after the Ireland this year, that they'd appointed one person on the team, the backroom staff, that they were going to be the go-to, so when it was the Friday afternoon question, it was like, listen, here's such and such.
Yeah, and even at your own personal level, like even give it to your dad or your brother or your wife or whoever it might be that you trust, and you say, look, here's the allocation of tickets I have for the game, this is all I have access to, which is generally players get whatever they get, and then they're going to break it down between immediate family members, friends, and to be honest, they won't have enough to cover the demand, so you nearly give it to someone else and say, right, and this is 2 weeks out from the game, this is who I want taken care of with tickets, there you go, and leave me out of it from now on. And I think and then it allows you, because it is something that it can distract from your focus if you're worried going, well, where are they going to be, and that's what I mean, like it's the other things, like even someone says, well, I'm going to be in section such and such after the game, so look out for me on the pitch, and you think, well,
where is that?
and again, that's only relevant if things go well, Absolutely. So, and again, that'll work. If you really need to find someone on the pitch after things have gone well, you'll find them in the stand, So, but little things like that, you're just trying to. I think again, the more experience and probably the more, and the good thing, while Tyrone players mightn't have that experience, Mickey Hart obviously has it in spades. So Mickey Hart can obviously, he can go through the lessons of what they would have learned from the teams of the naughties, and they can say, look, this is one of the things that we knew benefited us as a team and what helped us come together on All-Ireland final day, so he'd be able to share that with them. So it's not as if he's going in, it's not as if they've it's new for management and players, so exactly. I think that'll be a benefit to them.
We'll get into Dublin Tyrone in a little bit more detail, and we had a very special show last night at Croke Park in the lead into the big game. There was a lot of chat about Dublin Tyrone. We'll bring you some of that a bit later on, but also another topic hot on the agenda was the potential Mayo manager's gig, and talking about it were Jim McGuinness and James Horan.
Jim, what do you feel you could bring to the position that James couldn't?
I'm looking for a good number 2.
I don't know if Rory Gallagher is available, but you never know.
I thought they were going to say Geezer.
Yeah, there was a lot of mic drop moments right there last night. We'll bring you more of that last night, as Jim McGuinness rules himself out of any potential GA return at any point in the future, and James Horan much less so we'll bring you more chat on that in a little bit. But here's a bit of a flavour of what's coming up between now and 9 o'clock or thereabouts. Myself and Mossy are going to talk you through everything that's going on in the back pages in just a couple of moments' time. We're going to bring you some more of that chat between Jim McGuinness and James Horan with Joe at Croker last night. That is upcoming very shortly. Sean Boylan is going to join us in studio. You might have caught just over Mossy's shoulder a shot of that old Meath jersey. Not involved obviously this weekend, but Sean Boylan's in the house, so we thought that was appropriate. We're going to discuss the game obviously with him as well, previewing the game with Sean and with Mossy. And Alan Quinlan, the rugby season is upon us. It's day one of the new Guinness Pro 14 season, so Alan Quinlan is going to drop by around about 9 o'clock or thereabouts. So get your comments coming into us over the course of the morning. We'll take all of that good stuff. We might have a quiz as well. I think we'd actually had an idea to do one of the reruns of the crappy quiz, so if Tommy can get that sorted out for us in the next few minutes, that'd be great, and we'll bring you some of those questions over the course of the morning. But before all of that, let's give you a flavour of what's happening in these back pages this morning. We're going to start with the Irish Independent in just a second.
OTB AM. Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Listen, I'm only here one day a week, so it's like the capacity to hit these things, Mossy, can be sometimes rusty enough. The Irish Independent this morning, it's a nice shot there of a slightly different version that I have actually than the later version that's come out there. That's obviously looking ahead to that Republic of Ireland versus Northern Ireland game tonight. And Dub Stars clash on Connolly. So this is Keith Barr and Charlie Redmond, who were out before the media yesterday discussing whether Diarmuid Connolly would return or not. It's a slightly different version than I have, Mossy. I won't lie to you, because Bradley to start for Tyrone is what I've got.
You must have the phone fresh off the print there. I'd say.
Which is the freshest one.
Yeah, the Tyrone team, I'd say, came out late last night, so I'd imagine that's the earliest one this morning.
So Mark Bradley ousting Lee Brennan in that Tyrone full forward line. Carnacon win appeal is the other line here that definitely would have been the later version from Colm Keys. So the All-Ireland Ladies Club champions Carnacon late last night reinstated the Mayo Championship after a pretty symbolic week, it has to be said, for Carnacon. Cora Staunton was with us at the Roadshow last night and she spoke passionately about this. They haven't really gone into any of the great details as to why it was that it came about. They were obviously turfed out a little earlier in the week, and sense it seems has prevailed here.
Seems so, yeah. Certainly from the outside looking in, it seems like a very strange case across the whole summer, even from going back to when the kind of split within the team came about, and some of the players leaving for player welfare issues, and then obviously the majority of the group staying and seem to back the manager. And it's unusual in the sense that usually in these situations, if there actually is player welfare issues, I'm not suggesting there wasn't, but if there is, you'd imagine the whole squad would feel it, and they'd unite together, and possibly even with management, and they'd all go back to county board as a group, or they might go back to management as a group, and so it would lead you, and not too much official has come out from either side. I think they've both kind of committed to saying, look, we'll keep it in-house, which is respectable from a team point of view, but it obviously for us it makes it harder to kind of get into the ins and outs, and try and work out who's in the right here. Now when it goes to, I think any player has the right to choose who they make themselves available for. I think
that's what Cora was saying last night, that like we're not, I don't have to, if I decide to step away, I decide to step away. I'm not bringing the game into disrepute, which was the allegation. Which was
my understanding, and again I stand to be corrected of it, was the fact that the club communicated it to the Mayo County Board and said, all of our players, the Carnacon players, we're unavailable going forward due to player welfare issues. And the fact where if they all left as individuals and said, look, I'm leaving the panel for my own reasons, I think it's slightly different. So I think the fact that the correspondence came from the club itself led the Mayo Ladies County Board to feel, well, hang on, we're in a position to, and they obviously felt it was worthwhile putting a sanction on it. But as it's the way with GAA across the board, I think everyone kind of felt, well, that's not going to hold up, and there will be some sort of appeals process, and as it turns out, that's what happened. And you'd like to think, look, again, without knowing the ins and outs of it, I'd rather see stuff being sorted out on the field. I don't think anyone, particularly for something like this, for players choosing or for opting out themselves, I don't think it should have any impact on their ability to play in club championships or leagues and things like that. And I think you want as many people playing Gaelic games as possible, and hopefully sense prevails and they get back in there. Yeah, and it felt a little bit like, I think the vote was 26-2 or something like that, and they're obviously a highly successful club up in Mayo, and if teams want to knock them off their perch, then they should look to do it on the pitch rather than trying to do it.
Definitely felt like that. She was it was Joe put it to Cora last night that like there weren't, one of the things that's going on is not very liked. Like the remarkable thing is that she said herself that like they'd won 19 championships in 20 seasons, they'd won the All-Ireland Championship, and they'd never got as much coverage as when their name, as she put it, got blackened with this story as they have done now. But just the idea that they're not liked was obviously one of the theories put out there, and she was like, well, we've won 19 championships in 20 seasons. Like, who's going to like you when you're doing that? Not going to be
too popular. It's
sort of fair enough. So that's that story. And then Southgate coy on Rice interest but bemoans lack of young Premier stars. So this is Dan McDonnell in the Irish Independent saying that Declan Rice, to be fair, Gareth Southgate we've had good exposure to him over the course of the World Cup and his method, so you'd never expected him to come out and say, well, we want that guy, he's one of ours. You'd never really expect that kind of language from him. Difficult decision as how he's put it. He says, as far as I'm concerned, he's with Ireland at the moment, and as much as we think he's a very good player, that decision has to lie with him. So measured enough stuff from Gareth Southgate, which is a disaster for us, because if you're Declan Rice, you're like, this guy's pretty reasonable guy. He's not sort of putting a hard word on me. And
it seems to be a continuation of the way he did come across. During the summer, he did come across quite measured, quite likeable, and from that side of things, now maybe he has guys in the background doing the dirty work, and he's exactly, and he's got people within the FA kind of going through the channels at West Ham or through the player's agent and whatever else, and it allows him to come out and do that. But in fairness, it does come across pretty measured, and it kind of puts the ball back into Rice's court.
Damn it, the big Sam and that pint of wine, if he was just dead there, Mossy, would be fine. He'd come out lashing out looking for Declan Rice. So that's the Irish Independent this morning. The Irish Daily Star meanwhile leads with on All-Ireland final weekend, nice happy picture of Diarmuid Connolly there in a New York Donegal shirt, though Con too good. Keith Barr thinks that Diarmuid Connolly will never play for Dublin again. I mean, this is that'd be particularly sad, it has to be said, for even for neutrals.
It would be, yeah. The thing for me is the picture of Diarmuid in the Donegal jersey. No matter how many times I see it, I struggle to get my head around it. But yeah, look, to be honest with you, what I find ironic with Keith's piece, and that is, he gives his opinion on whether Diarmuid will ever play for Dublin again. I hardly doubt that Keith has any kind of inside track as to whether Diarmuid is going to play for Dublin again, and I find it ironic he's pleading for people to leave him alone and to not focus on him, yet he's making comments like this, which obviously doesn't help the situation. So I think that's something you'll see play out over the next couple of months, and I certainly wouldn't be in a hurry to make a call like that.
He's sort of 30, is he? Early 30s?
He's 31, yeah.
31, yeah. But I mean, plenty of time. And
absolutely, yeah. From a physical viewpoint, there's absolutely no issue with him playing inter-county football for another couple of years. You know, like as in he's
flaking teams out in New York anyway. By all accounts.
Well, he's in Boston at the moment. Yeah, in Boston. Yeah, he is. Yeah. Now look, obviously, like the standard of football over there, it'll be quite high to a certain extent. But in terms of, like, he's obviously not near that level. Wouldn't be anywhere near inter-county football here at home. But in terms of his ability and his physical ability and his, would he be capable of playing inter-county, coming back and playing inter-county? Absolutely, that wouldn't be in question.
Would he be in that team if he was back now? I mean, I'm not saying that he jetted in for the weekend and sort of Jim Gavin opened the door, but if he'd been around for the last number of months, is he in that Dublin team this weekend? Presumably so.
Well, I would have thought so. From a skill set point of view and what he offers the team, he's proven over the last number of years that once he can, if he's healthy and he's able to play in terms of obviously last year from a suspension point of view, he obviously missed out a couple of months and he came on as a sub. But how crucial he was in that All Ireland final last year when he came on at half time against Mayo, and they haven't missed him to date. So obviously Sunday will be a big challenge on that regard. But if he was here, I absolutely think he'd be in the team. Yeah.
The difference between beating teams by 5 points and 10 points maybe is the Diarmuid Connolly difference here. McGuinness rules out Mayo job. So this is Ciarán Cunningham reflecting on those comments from Jim McGuinness at the Off the Ball Roadshow at Croke Park last night, saying that I mean, it's no great surprise, Mossy, I suppose, that if at this point he had decided that actually I am going to put my hat in the ring for that Mayo job, it would have been like all the work that he's done to get at this stage of his career in terms of the soccer thing, that was pretty much, that's going to be dead at that point. Whereas this way, he can continue with that for the next 4, 5, 6 years and still come back and take a GAA job at some point down the track. Yeah,
it feels like that, yeah. And again, exactly, he's invested that time, and you'd imagine it's a kind of an itch that he has to scratch from the side of things that he's been in. Like, he's obviously had his role at Celtic, he went over to China, he obviously feels he's progressing from a soccer coaching perspective, and you'd imagine he'd love to get that kind of the top job in terms of being the head man, being a manager or a head coach at one of the teams. And I suppose it just depends on where that is. Is it in Ireland, is it in England, what level is that at, and what is the realistic levels of progression. But exactly, I think if he came back to GA now, he's effectively closing the door on that, which would obviously kind of shut off the last 5 or 6 years work he's done. And I suppose it's up to him. He's obviously trying to continue to evolve as a coach, and if he does come back to GA, it'll probably be a couple of years down the line. Yeah,
and a bit of patience, I suppose, as well as the other thing from his point of view, like having come back from China and not worked for a number of months. I'd say in that game, you're not looking up Jobbio sort of thinking, wonder what the next vacancy is going to come up. So a bit of patience obviously would be required there. The Herald this morning is looking ahead to this game as well on Sunday. It's Johnny Cooper all on the line here. Discipline will be crucial. More Keith Barr back pages here on the Irish Sun this morning. You'd get an effing kebab or chase a bit of skirt. Barr, we had it easy. This is just the idea of whether having too much fun is kind of detrimental to putting back.
It's quite the headline for the GA headline for the Friday morning of going into the All Ireland final. So it's. It's hard to know really where to go with that. Like, in fairness, I think what's Keith talking about is obviously what they would have had during the 90s in terms of from a player perspective, and obviously he's kind of comparing it to now and how different it is now, the spotlight on players, and in terms of social media, in terms of what you can do, in terms of even on nights out after games and different things like that. And I suppose it's that's his way of comparing to what he was up to compared to what players might do now.
As you say, not sure what to say about it. It probably sums it up quite nicely. The Irish Daily Mirror this morning, it's all going wrong for Jose. The Champions League draw obviously been made yesterday, and Manchester United have landed. I mean, they're not in a great place anyway, so it's hard to know what will be a good group for Manchester United, but certainly Juventus and Ronaldo coming back. The storylines have already been written in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I'm sure the journalists are delighted with it. And again, they could have got a worse group. I think when you look at some of the other teams out there, I think even if you look at Liverpool's group, is probably a tougher group. So obviously Ronaldo coming back is the story. Now, it's not his first time back. He was obviously back with Madrid a couple of years ago in a quarter-final, I think, of the Champions League. So he has been back, but again, he obviously has a special relationship with United fans, and you'd imagine he's going to get another big ovation. And I think that the challenge for Jose might be make sure he's in the job by the time he gets there.
Beaten by Burnley this weekend.
And this is it. So like that's the I think that's the thing. Well, it suits, but Ronaldo coming back is an easy story. I think the bigger picture is how United react over the next couple of weeks before the Champions League gets going.
One more from me before Mossy brings you through the final few newspapers. This one is the Racing Post, and also just reflections on the Champions League draw. City favourites to fly the flag in Europe. Tough draws for Liverpool, United, and for Spurs. That's the Racing Post. Mossy, you're going to kick us off there with the Examiner.
Just a couple here, with the Examiner. They feature there's a big piece in the middle of the Examiner sports section. Peter Canavan holds court with 5 legends at Tyrone. So in terms of Canavans, I think it's brought to you by Declan Bogue, and it has the likes of John McMahon in it, Fergal Logan, and they cover, I suppose, historically in the last 20 years, the rise of Tyrone football. Interesting for me, one of the pieces I'm looking forward to reading in more detail is Paul Rouse, probably one of the most interesting men in the GA. He's got asking the question, is much of the Gaelic football played now actually worth watching? And that seems to be a kind of a common question over the course of the summer with the games we've seen, and depending on the quality of the final this weekend, I'd say we might see more conversations like that in the days next week. And Paul is a pretty interesting take on football. He obviously went back into intercounty management with Offaly this year after their manager situation in May. So that's one worth reading. The Irish Times sports section again, similarly Johnny Cooper again in some of the papers. So Johnny, again, we are there to win and to perform. I think one of the key things for me for Dublin, and again we'll get into it in more detail later on, is that perform piece. They've got through, they've won finals in the last couple of years, and again it's probably, they've won close games against Kerry and Mayo, and they've kind of just got over the line in most of them. I think that's a feeling around Dublin at the moment. They haven't really produced their best performance in a final, and there might be a sense of frustration for some of the guys within the team. So I think that's one of their motivating factors going into this weekend. Yeah,
obviously people talk about them not blitzing teams or whatever, but there's a real quality obviously to getting over the line by a point too.
Absolutely, 100%. And I don't think when you look at those games and you look at how close they were against Kerry and Mayo, and the Mayo games in particular in the last couple of years, I think when you look back on them winning those games, it's a massive result for them. And it's a huge performance to even get to that. But I think the feeling is they just probably haven't really clicked and they haven't delivered. Certainly when you look through it in terms of from individual players, there'll be a number of individual players that will feel frustrated with some of their own performances, and I think that would probably lend itself. Yes, they're delighted they won. Yes, they're delighted they've obviously won in All Ireland, but in terms of when they're coming off the pitch, we probably left a little bit out there, and I think that's one of the things that we're going after this week.
Not really clicking, and being about to do 4 in a row is grand, by the way.
Absolutely, it's a good spot to be in. And then finally it's the Irish Daily Mail, and again it's back to the Jose and Ronaldo again, just when United boss thought couldn't get any worse. Old Trafford legend returns, and then again back on the back of the Off the Ball Roadshow last night, McGuinness won't take the Mayo job. So I think we've covered both of those for the moment. And then again, just finally Mark Bradley again. This is obviously put in late. Mark Bradley is starting for, or he's named to start anyway for Tyrone, and the teams that are named for this Sunday.
We'll talk a bit about that, and also the sort of state of the game at the minute, because I know John Mahon was on during the week talking about boring football. So we might have a little bit of a chat with that, with yourself and with Seán Boylan as well. So Seán Boylan is in the house. He's upcoming. But first of all, we want to bring you a little bit of a flavour from last night's show at Croke Park. We'd, as Mossy said, it's on some of the back pages this morning. Jim McGuinness and James Horan on the Mayo job. Take a look.
James, what can you bring to the position that Jim can't, would you say?
Right, first answer is important, obviously, but what do I say? Where do I start? Where do I go? Interesting times, and really looking forward to the Dublin and Tyrone match at the weekend.
Yes, no, we all are. You're obviously the favourite for the job at the moment. Are you interested?
I rang Joe on the way up and threatened him not to be at me about asking questions, but here we go, straight away. Only joking. What was the question?
Are you interested, or have you made up your mind?
On the Mayo position?
Yeah.
No.
You haven't made up your mind, or you're not interested?
Well, I have an answer prepared.
Right,
will I go with the no?
He does have an answer prepared, I heard it.
Basically where it is my position, and I'll try and give it as without giving too much away or whatever, but the Mayo position has come available. Obviously Stephen Rochford, it's very hot off the pan. There's the Mayo County Board have set up a committee to look into the position. I remember when I moved away in 2014, and straight away those people talking about the position or who would go for it or whatever, and I just thought, Jesus Christ, could they not give us a bit of space and give people a bit of space? That's only ended. Can they just let the process happen and let things go through? So that's what I thought then, and that's what I think now. The Stephen Rochford has had a very successful 3 years involved with Mayo. The team played some of the best football, against in All-Ireland finals. Even last year, we think about it, they played very, very well. And so I just think, he just needs a bit of space. You don't want people shouting, I'm going for it, or whatever it is. Let the process take its course. I'm manager of Westport and really enjoying that, working with a young bunch of guys, very keen, very ambitious, and doing very, very well. And we have a huge game against Kilmaine, I don't know if it's any, at the weekend, where we can go top of the league, and we're in the quarterfinals of the championship. And that's genuinely where I am. I have not thought or have contacted, or no one has contacted me anything about Mayo position, and I genuinely haven't really thought of it. So where I am now, I'm just very happy with Westport and continuing on with that.
Because I think you always did maybe have the intention of going back at some stage.
Yeah, I'm a Mayo man that absolutely loves Mayo football, and I'm a coach. I really love coaching guys that are ambitious and keen to do well. So that's what I love doing. So at some stage, of course, I'd love to get involved again. But is the time right for me, for the team, for the county board, or whatever? I don't know if it is. There's so much stuff there. So,
but it could be. You're not ruling yourself out, is my sense.
Yeah, where I am now at the moment, I would say for me personally, no, I've so much going on at the moment. So that's where I'd be at the moment. But in the future, who knows what happens?
Okay, I appreciate your. It's delicate to talk about a job where it's, the king is dead, long live the king.
Cover most stuff there.
No, we got the full life story, we got everything. You have a game at the weekend. No, we're with you, we're with you.
I'm really excited about Jim's answer, though. That's what I'm going to do.
Jim, what do you feel you could bring to the position that James couldn't?
I'm looking for a good number 2.
I don't know if Rory Gallagher is available, but you never know.
I thought they were going to say Weezer.
Oh dear, poor Rory. I'd say opened the Irish Times fearing us for his life for a few years there. What are your thoughts? I mean, you were with Celtic for 5 years.
No.
You were in Beijing under a brilliant coach, Roger Schmidt, up until January, and then China's a long way from home, so you've come home.
Yeah.
Are you interested in potentially getting back into GAA, or is it still football, soccer?
No, I'm not. No, not at the moment. Definitely not.
Definitely not.
No. I think for myself, like it's been a long journey of development, if you like, in another sport. Like these two men beside me, I spent all my life practicing to try and be an inter-county footballer. I managed to achieve that, and it was the greatest honour you could have, and play for your county. And then to manage your county is the icing on the cake in many respects, But I was sort of plucked from obscurity in many respects, and offered the opportunity to do something that is a massive challenge, if you like. It is a massive challenge, there's no doubt about that. I've had great support from Celtic the whole way along, from the owner the whole way through to the managers that I've worked under. And I continue to get that support and work still very closely with them. And I'm on a journey, really, and I've come back, finished my badges, my A licence. I'm looking now I'm in a position to take a team, and I'm looking to do that now shortly.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at, really.
Because if you went in and did the Mayo job for a year or 2 or 3 years, that would almost be an admission, like I'm giving up on the soccer journey, really. It'd be hard to go back in after another 3 years away, I would presume.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I've dedicated 6 years to what I'm doing at the minute, so it's I need to get the answer if I can do it or not, if that makes sense, and I'm excited, to be honest with you, because I've recently got a lot closer in my mind to how I see the game, how the game will be coached, how the game will be trained. When I started out in Gaelic, I started out with a blank piece of paper as a very young man, and built up what I felt was a way to develop a team and build a team and coach a team. I've done the same in soccer, and that document is complete now. I've spoken to a lot of high-level coaches around the world that have kind of stress tested it, if you like, and sort of had a good look at it and give me feedback on it. And I'm feeling now just that it's getting to that point where I'm looking forward to see kind of make it happen, So it needs to be professional sport. For me, it needs to be senior men. To test myself, because there's a difference, there is a difference.
Yeah, that's Jim McGuinness and James Horan talking to Joe at our roadshow at Croke Park last night. So Two footballing legends there, and I'm delighted to say myself and Mossy have been joined in studio by another absolute football legend, Sean Boylan. Very good morning to you.
And to you too, Adrian. Thanks very much, Lee. Tommy, how are you doing? Tomas, how are you doing?
Sean.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. It's funny how the excitement builds up, isn't it?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Last few days you think, no, and suddenly, you're getting the butterflies, and at my stage I'm still getting the butterflies. And what would you do? How would you go about this job? You know?
Yeah,
it's great. Yeah.
What do you think about the two lads sort of hotballing there about the Mayo job? Obviously, it looks like James Horan sort of didn't entirely say he wasn't interested. He looks like a good fit.
He would be a very natural fit. He'd be the first one to say about how good a job Stephen Rochford has done. He's done an amazing job. Just that hop of the ball that everybody needs, that little bit of luck. If that doesn't go with you, it's a very easy thing to sort of apportion blame to a manager, whatever it is. And all the great teams that I was ever lucky enough to be involved with, they were the ones that took responsibility. You know, your job is to try and have as best you can, have everything right. And I'm not saying that the Mayo guys didn't take responsibility. The heart, the courage that they had was enormous, and Stephen got so much out of them. But there's nothing worse, I think, than uncertainty. I remember when I was involved, I could never take the job for longer than a year. And when it was over, people would say, "Well, are you interested? You know, are you going again?"
Yeah.
I said, "Look, I'll wait till I'm nominated. If I'm nominated, then I'll say yes or no." And I would do that very quickly. And I think it's the only way. Otherwise, honest to God, you wouldn't have time for anything else in life. And if you haven't those other things to bring that balance into it, then you're in trouble. Like, there's such an enormous number of great footballers in the county of Mayo. There's so many people down there that have given so much to it within the county itself. But like, I know nobody has time to do the job, but put the hat in the ring, have a cut at it, and you know what I mean, and lads will go along with you.
And when he's out for a couple of years as well now, James, he's probably starting to think, even though he's a very busy man professionally with a young family like you're saying, there's not much time for a lot else when you're doing it. But I'm sure when you're out for a couple of years, you're kind of starting to think, geez, maybe it wasn't all that bad. I might have another crack off this. Yeah, you love it,
and there's such an excitement involved in it, and I'd be still like a child going to matches, you know, and because sort of Horan, our youngest man, is only 14, and Aoife she's 17, she's playing with the girls in Dunboyne and so on, and they won All Ireland intermediate last year. Like the excitement in the place, the fact that even the Meath team, you know, the ladies who got the intermediate final against Tyrone and so on, it's the buzz is there. But there's a great envy in the rest of us as well for both Tyrone and for Dublin to be in the position that they're in for next Sunday, because every other county feels, if only, you know what I mean? It's like ourselves with Tyrone. If only, you know what I mean?
The grain of rice that Paddy spoke about sometimes, like you were saying with Stephen Rochford, it can swing quite easily both ways. We'll get into with you about the match in just a minute, but you are here to talk about as well about Sport Heroes Afternoon Tea, which you're involved with. It's raising funds and awareness for the Christina Noble Children's Foundation. It's an event that's at the Morrison Hotel. It's in a couple of weeks' time on September the 15th. It's at 2 o'clock. A load of sporting legends, including yourself, Fergus Slattery and Fiona Coughlin, and it's, as I said, to raise awareness for the Christina Noble Foundation. CNCF, by the way, .org is the website to check out if you're interested in having along.
With a heart and a half. It's she's probably one of the most extraordinary women I was ever fortunate enough to meet. Lots of people will bemoan all the things that have happened to them in life. Every single adversity that came her way, she used that to foster the situation where people would have a better chance of living life and enjoying the most of it, and giving them their value of what they are, extraordinary human beings. And the Vietnamese people are the most peaceful people in the world, and you know, to think that their soul was nearly destroyed, and people like Christina to come in, and sometimes it takes somebody from outside to do it, but the people that she got along with her, they've developed this extraordinary organisation. And I love the name, sort of the Sunshine Schools. And the French have a great name about the dandelion. You know, I'm a herbalist, right? In Dublin it's called the ginny joe or the pistol bed, right? In France they call it the sunshine herb because it lifts the whole serotonin. And people like Christina Noble, not because of the blonde hair, but she lifts that sunshine. She lifts it beyond the realm of where normally they would have been. And if there's anything the world I can do by being there, I would be only honoured and delighted to be there.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, look we're delighted to get behind it and delighted you come in on that basis to talk to us this morning. We'll give out the details again before we wrap up with you. You've spoken a couple of times already about your excitement about sort of this point of the year and this point of the season. John Maughan was on with us because he's obviously getting back in the game now himself after a few years out.
And I wish him the best
with the Offaly job. So
it'll be great.
He was talking about boring football was how he put it, and I think in the hurling context, and I know you're a hurling man as well, in the hurling context and everything that's gone on there, he was saying that he hasn't overly enjoyed the quality of football or the fare almost so much this summer. What's your thought on it?
Some may appear like that, but it's such a, there's such thought goes into it, there's such preparation goes into it. The guys are playing within the rules that are there within the game. Like people give out about the black card, it was brought in to do away with the third man tackle, and it has worked. But I remember I was fortunate enough when poor Dave Billings died, God got him to be on the rules committee. The very first meeting was at, I said, look, let's start rewarding the people on the field of play. So you give a black card in the old international rules, the ball is then taken up 30 metres from the goal, and suddenly if things like that have been sorted out, very little can change it. I was talking to Pat O'Neill who was Jim's manager in '95 when he won his All-Ireland with Pat Gilroy, and Desi Farrell and all the lads, Charlie Redmond, and he was just saying, Sean, there's only what you have to do is just one hand pass. Now I was a proponent of 3 hand passes, and you had to kick the ball. But look, let's not overlook some of the extraordinary skill that we're seeing over the last, even within the year. Yeah. It mightn't be consistent with all the other teams, but even the way sort of Roscommon and the way, like when they were going well and when they were scoring, they were exciting to watch when they were doing that. It's that consistency and being able to keep it up. And but it's a question of, you'll always get peaks and valleys. Like a few years ago, people were saying hurling was dead. You had a hurling committee set up to try and revive hurling. Football, don't blame Dublin for being as good as they are. But if I was a Dublin man and I was looking back to the semi-final last year, I'd be looking at a very simple situation. In the first 7 minutes, Tyrone got 5 goal chances and they didn't put it away. Now, if they got 1 or 2 of those, Mossy,
everything,
it would have changed everything, Mossy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would,
absolutely.
Of course, yeah.
And then suddenly, when you're trying to break through or make the ascendancy, that suddenly it maybe just puts a doubt in your mind. Now, it's a very difficult thing to beat any team 3 times in 1 year, like in the league or the championship. And it's a monumental task for Dublin on Sunday. I believe it's a huge task because Tyrone have nothing to lose and there's some amazing footballers. And like you take the likes of Richie Donnelly in around the square, and he's so good. I think it's going to be a cracker.
Just to go back to one of the things I think we need to stop doing is comparing football and hurling. They're so different. They're totally different sports. And just because hurling has a brilliant year, sometimes then it leads people to say, well, hurling's been brilliant. Let's enjoy it for being brilliant. There's no reason, hurling is so unique in terms of the speed, the skill set, everything involved in it, that just because hurling's had a brilliant year shouldn't overly impact on then what the football landscape. We should be able to separate them and say, well, hang on, what is happening in football? And I agree with Sean, if it does need, the game probably does need 1 or 2, and it's tweaks, it's not a massive overhaul. It's 1 or 2 small little things, and you might need to trial them in the league or to see, well, is it a 1 hand pass or is it 3 hand passes? Or I'm a big fan of the idea of what they use in the international rules, that if there is a certain amount of fouls or consistent fouling, you bring the free up and it's a free straight in front of the goals 25 yards out. That will take away so much. It changes. You want to change discipline within the game, you give a scoreable free away in his own like that.
Reward the good things.
Reward the good things, and that's why you see some things like frees or sidelines have to go forward and things like that. I'm kind of like, well, you're restricting the team in possession there. I think any rule changes should be to try and encourage, obviously, positive attack and play, entertain and play. It shouldn't be a penalty to get a free again. One of my big bugbears, right? They brought in the rule change with the kick out last year, right? No issue with the rule change, but even the way it was worded. So the kick out now has to go 21 yards out. But if you read the rules, so the goalkeeper's taking his kick out, and it says the defending team. So the defending team being the goalie's team. So kicking it out, it says no defender can get the ball inside the 21. My attitude is, he's not the defender, he's the attacker. Stephen Cluxton has the ball, Dublin are attacking. So the rule actually even says, even the rule, the way the rule was put in, it even says no defender can touch the ball. For me, whoever's wearing 13, 14, 15, they're the defenders. And even the thought process around that, and I think there has to be a longer term view. We can't be too reactionary just to say, well, it's been one or two things have happened in the last year or two. We need to have a step back and say, well, what do we want our game to look like in 5 years' time? What's transferable down to club level? So when an under 14 goes out, he can emulate what's happening, what he sees in Croke Park. And I think a couple of those things, and again, you need to get smart people involved and say, right, let's trial this for a year. Some things will work, some things won't work, and then take a longer term view. And I think that for me will be a kind of a better idea in terms of rather than just.
But Mossy, if you take Tom Flynn, for Galway, 3 times he got inside. The Dublin defence. Now, 3 or 4 years ago, Tom got the goal of the year with a cracker of a goal against Kerry. And don't tell me that, Kevin Walsh wouldn't want him to go on. And I don't know why, Tom, because it's in his nature to go on and bury it, you know what I mean? But it was nearly like he was nearly too much of a team player. And there's times, like any decent forward, there's times that you have to have that thing about yourself. Well, I'm going to plant this.
Ruthlessness almost.
Yeah, I think that's a balance between a player knowing everyone plays within a system or a kind of a set of tactics. But good teams and good managers will lay out. They don't want to stifle that individuality, that player's instinct to say, well, I have a chance here. I'm going to go for the jugular. What you don't want is someone doing that and saying, well, I'm supposed to get to a certain point and now come out and recycle it, and there's meant to be someone here. Then you've gone too far. You've gone beyond that. You need to have it, and I think that's for me. I know there's a lot of questions over in terms of Dublin are a bit more controlled. Is a word you hear a lot about Dublin this year, and but like Conor O'Callaghan still had 4 or 5 goal chances in the Leinster final. Graham Brodie, the Laois goalie, made a couple of unbelievable saves. And the talk then was Con hadn't hit the same levels he'd hit as last year because he got the early goal against Tyrone, he got the early goal against Mayo. Another day he could have left that Leinster final scoring a hat-trick and everyone would have been like, oh, he's kicked on again this year. So it is those little fine margins. Some days, and you can't overreact to that, and that's why sometimes it feels like that a little bit in terms of how people view it. And that's why I do think that the better coaches and really good teams genuinely only care about what's said within the 4 walls. If a coach gives you feedback or if another player gives you, like if another Galway player went to Tom Flynn and said, listen Tom, next time you do that, I'm making that run to make the space for you. I don't want the ball. I don't want you to come back to me. I'm actually running out of the way to leave a hole there for you. You keep going, you score a goal, and I'm happy with that. And I think that's when when a team is at a certain level. And I think that's one of the things Dublin have been at for the last couple of years. They have that probably level of understanding of what they're trying to do.
One of the things that Jim McGuinness was talking about last night before we leave this topic was the relentlessness and almost a lack of a relentlessness from Gaelic football. That was the thing that he kind of thought was the secret sauce almost to try and move this thing forward. But I don't think he was being catastrophic about it necessarily, but he was saying that it's lacking a bit of relentlessness. It sort of strikes me that probably a lot of teams are, because of Dublin's dominance and like nobody's to fault them for it, teams are probably setting their year around. The better teams are setting the year around having a pop off Dublin at some point in the year. And that always isn't going to result in a relentlessness of football. It's going to result in some sort of a game management situation that they can get themselves, that they believe they can implement when it comes to late August and they're playing Dublin, I guess. It almost fosters a bit of a defensive outlook, I suppose. It
does, I suppose. A classic example of that would be Galway against Monaghan. And Galway knew that, well, there was always, we're out in a couple of weeks or whatever. Whereas if you look back on it, I would say some of the lads are saying, God, we should have gone at them even harder.
The last of the Super 8 games where they were already through. And
and because we're animals of habit, and when something goes wrong, as happened with Conor went a few matches, things weren't working for him. Like Fenton in the second half, Lord Jesus, against Galway, he suddenly became the extraordinary player that he is again, and he was the master of all the surveyed at that stage. And everybody goes through that peak, and it's how the other players keep you going in the game when things aren't going well. And that relentlessness thing it's brilliant, but like I would often say about Meath football, like it's like a controlled fury. If you try to structure us too much, we don't seem to be able to cope with it. A bit like Cork hurlers, you know what I mean? And maybe there is a certain amount of that in our psyche, the way we think within the county itself. And to be able to break through that's a huge thing. And but suddenly when you break through it, we'd often slag, because it's 30 years ago this year, Meath won Allard against Cork, and Colin O'Rourke's pal was sent off, Jerry McEntee. Now Colin O'Rourke would never have fouled anybody. And suddenly when Jerry was sent off,
there's a few Dublin defenders who dispute that, Sean.
honestly, but from '88 on, in that match, not only did he have an extraordinary game, he threw lads out of the way. He refereed the match for Tommy Sugru. I never saw a man, you know what I mean? But suddenly, it was. It was like this was pretty
almost.
Yeah, but it's personal, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And it's like your whole pride and everything else, and that sort of pride in yourself, you know what I mean? Is we can talk about the jersey, you know what I mean? Yeah. But until it becomes part of your skin and such, you know what I mean? It's so I can see where Jim is coming from, like.
Sorry, Sean, just on the relentlessness you're talking about. For me, one of the images of relentlessness is the famous clips of the Tyrone team taking the ball off the Kerry team back in 2003. You know that one where it goes from Darrow Canada to Darrow Shea, and there's 5, and they're hunting in packs, and it was one of those ones everyone kind of took, and it was on the documentary that was shown last week, and you saw the clip of it, and that to me is what I associate with relentlessness. But it feels like teams have gone. You still need to be incredibly brave to do that, because if you're doing that far up the pitch, you're still man on man at the back. And if Kerry do get the ball out of that kind of group, then all of a sudden you have to trust your full back line to be one-on-one. To me, it seems like a lot of teams trusted their defenders a lot more, or certainly Mickey Hart might. And again, it's hard to compare player with player back for that.
There's a shot of it there.
There's the shot of it there. So like that, but that was probably 80 yards from the Tyrone goal. Yeah. I would say on Sunday, it would be very, very rare. There's how many? 3, 6, 8 Tyrone players in that picture.
First few minutes of the game as well.
But the way Tyrone have played in the last number of years, they will not have 8 players committing to a tackle that far away from their own goal. The sense is you drop back, you bring everyone back to your 45. You'll have Colin Kavanagh back there. You'll have Frank Byrne sitting. You'll have a couple of different guys, and I think you talk about relentlessness, that's the type of thing they have to bring. But again, it's to challenge them in a different way. If they drop everyone back and they set up in a kind of a blanket or whatever you want to call it, Dublin have seen that for the last 3 years. Dublin will eventually, and that's why Dublin are patient in possession, they'll try and draw them out. Now, I'm not saying that will necessarily work if they do that, but it is something different, and I think it's easier to bring that relentlessness when you have that out the pitch and someone's on the ball thinking, I'm going to have a bit of time here. Because at the moment, every Dublin half-back or midfielder, or when Kieran drops back or Kev Mack comes on and drops back, they've time on the ball. They can take 3 or 4 touches, they can give it, they can move it, they can decide which direction they're going. Whereas in that image there, no Kerry player had a second. The minute he got the ball, he was getting hit. And all of a sudden there was a step back. And even in the stadium, you could sense, well, hang on, this is different here. Yeah. And I think it's harder to have that relentlessness if you're sitting and waiting. As teams now aren't, originally teams were kind of carrying it into that blanket and then you could swamp them and you could go and hit them on the break, what Donegal did. But teams are smarter now. Dublin in particular have shown they're not going to carry that ball into multiple bodies. You'll very rarely get a Dublin player who'll carry the ball. Jack McCaffrey has enough speed and they'll keep enough width that Jack's not going to carry it. If he sees 2 Tyrone players coming at him, he's going to turn and he'll have an option to give it to. Yeah. He's not going to leave himself in a situation where 4 or 5 guys are going to get a chance to go in and swarm him. And if he does, it'll be rare. You could probably count it on one hand, and I think that's one of the evolutions of kind of, in terms of from a tactical viewpoint, but that's again going back to that word and how you can bring that intensity
Well, it's bloody impossible. I mean, whatever about the sort of early 2000s, particularly where fitness levels are at, and fitness levels with this Dublin team, for Tyrone to potentially try and unleash something like that. But you're, I think, nail on the head stuff in terms of trying to push on, Sean, almost for that. Like, you've got to do it for 70 minutes. It's bravery about it.
But this team that's evolving over the last couple of years, they are incredibly good on the break. There's an awful lot of speed within
the Tyrone team.
They are, they are, and that's why I think it's going to be a powerful chance. I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I think.
What do you like? There's a 6 point spread, is what everybody's talking about. What's your sense of that?
I wouldn't say it'll be a 6 point spread.
Right.
No, I think no. But I just Dublin have shown up to this, that no matter what's thrown at them, they always have that resolve and they always make it happen. All right, they don't hope it'll happen. They just make it happen. And I don't think anybody has put doubts in their head at all. Now, if Tyrone can do that for long enough, well, then anything can happen. But again, that's the challenge, and that's why we go there, and that's why we'll have the food early and head in. You know what I mean? And that's it, Joe. It's just such a magic place to be.
They're an incredible bunch, Sean, aren't they, in terms of their belief? Like, I mean, we've been chatting with Alan Brogan on during the week, and I was talking to him about Owen Mulligan had made some comments during the week about, and I won't put them to Mossy just yet, about sort of what he described as a mental fragility of Dublin kind of in the pre-Pat Gilroy era, but the teak toughness of, like he was saying, you could get at that team and you could silence the hill and all these extraneous factors that doesn't seem to be part of it for this current Dublin team.
It's their aesthetics. Like, to me, there's not an ego on it, on the team. And that's extraordinary for a team that has achieved what they've achieved. And that's a credit to the lads themselves, it's a credit to Jim, and the lads are involved with him. And that little bit of humility is a great thing to have, do you know what I mean? And that recognising that if I don't do my job, they're going to destroy me. And that's what those Dublin lads seem to have. You often heard of being streetwise, but very mature as well. And you know, you just marvel at the consistency that they can keep doing it all the time.
Because ego can be a positive thing when used. I would have thought there was a few egos in a lot of the teams that you would have managed down the years, and you can use that as almost as a positive. You can,
but I'm talking about like in their whole demeanour, the way they carry themselves and everything else. Like it's
everything is team first.
Everything. Like if there's somebody in a better place, they'll give it. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter who you are, or what you are. Do you know what I mean? Or who comes in. Automatically they're into the same thing. And years and years ago when I was involved, I loved looking at whatever team we're playing against, even the coach or the trainer or the manager. What does he do? What did he work at? You know what I mean? And you know, and you know, sort of let it be the army or let it be a teacher or whatever it was. And it can tell you an awful lot about sort of the way they think, because they're really smart and they're really clever, you know what I mean? And I always remember Kevin Heffernan, God be good to him, you know what I mean? Like, he had that many aces up his sleeve, you know what I mean? And you knew that there were certain things he was going to do. It could be for Mick Holden in front of Colin O'Rourke and Jerry Hargan behind or whatever. Yeah. But like, he would have thought that, because he would have thought that, well, because Colin was such a dominant man, the lads are going to give it to him all the time. And that's what all the good managers do. But it's this thing of coming up with the systems of survival. And after what happened against Donegal with Jim Gavin, but it wasn't Jim. It's the way he brings that knowledge from all the other people with him together. I think that's what makes him different. And Mickey Hart is a very similar ilk. And like, he's proved that right down through the years. But that steely belief in what you're doing, if you haven't got that, like, I'd be a very personable man, and in normal conversation I'd love sitting back and listening to people and so on, but I learned a big lesson having hammered 10 points by Laois in the semi-final of a Leinster one year. And I learned that unless the lads aren't going to take responsibility, then we go nowhere. And I arrived in home one night and there were 6 of the lads in the kitchen with my mother, drinking tea and eating brown bread, and she smothered them all with smoke, and she's smoking away, and I didn't even know they were coming. And that night she said, all up the house, you crowd, when I came back in. And you were talking with Jerry Mack and Colin O'Rourke and Joe Castles, Mick and Pádraig Lyons and Liam Hayes, and all very different personalities, or very strong personalities. And when we were nearly finished talking, Pádraig said, will you do me a favour? Will you put your shyness in your arse pocket? And I said, are you serious about that? And from then on, the chairs went round in a circle. And that's how we as a group, not just within that, but within the county board and everything, that's how we got the breakthrough. It was hard and an awful lot of work, but there was a togetherness, and that's a powerful thing. And a responsibility, is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. In terms of the players? How do you get them to, like, how do you get them to a point? It sounds like if they're calling to you, they're already on that road, obviously, but how do you get them to a point where, like, it's not quite cutting the cord, but it's saying, listen, you guys can make the decisions here.
Well, they knew they could do it for 10 or 15 minutes, to be able to do it for 20 minutes, to be able to do it for half an hour. That if somebody got hurt, somebody got injured, that you hadn't forgotten your roadmap. You know what I mean? But it has to become nearly part of your DNA. Isn't that right, Mossy? It
does, absolutely. Yeah,
it really has.
And I think that the player buy-in, obviously, and it's including them in it and bringing them on the journey with you. And you hear that, you know, there's a lot of buzzwords around sport at the moment, and teams at the moment, and culture, but all this type of stuff. I think the more you can do as a group and bring everyone in on the same level, so everyone feels that level of responsibility. Everyone's as invested in it as you are, and someone's not sitting at the back of the room going, well, he's the star player, he's the manager. Everyone has to have that buy-in and that honesty and that openness, and that's what you're talking about, the circle. It has to be that everyone's on the same level, rather than people on, you know, looking back thinking, well, that's not like. One thing I always laughed, even in Vincent's a couple of years ago, we've had a success over the last couple of years, and one of the young guys came into the team, and I remember someone asking him, I was in his company, and someone said, I don't even know how it came up, but whose team is it? And he kind of said, oh, well, it's Diarmuid's team or it's Mossy's team. And I was like, no, it's our team, it's your team, you know. And I remember he said it to me then the following year. He played a key role in us winning a championship. He said it to me the following year. I remember him saying, he goes, actually went home that night and I was thinking about it, going, well, maybe it could be part of my team, you know, and it's only, and everyone has to believe that, and goes with the guys who are only starting to believe it, but even the key guys have to believe it, because if they think it is their team, then it won't be. If it's an individual's team, it's not going to be a successful team, I don't think. So.
And then on top of all that, then you have always somebody, it's nearly called like the heart of a team, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether they're playing or whether they're not playing, you know what I mean? And you take a Colin Cavan, you take a Matty Donnelly, you take Johnny Cooper, right? Come back from the accident that he had, and to come back and survive and everything else. And then you come along and take Michael Darragh Macaulay. Just wherever he is, or whenever he's there, when he's on the line, the minute he puts his foot on the ground, he's that driving, that and they're the people that, you know, but someday somebody else, like it could be Con, you know, or Richie Donnelly, you know what I mean? They could become then the heart of the team, that something that they do just brings it to a different level. You've
probably seen that with Brian Fenton in the last year. And Brian comes in and like that, they become, and like Sean says, they're the kind of the spiritual leader of the team then on the pitch. And again, if something happened to them, it probably would mean more. Like, as in, there's no doubt about it. While you want that everyone to believe they're on the same level, there's obviously some players who have a more important role than others within the group. But in terms of the ownership level of what players have invested into it, I think there has to be an equality there. Just to go back, I'm just laughing. You're saying you used to look at other managers and what they did. I'd say every other inter-county manager was scouring the country for another herbalist to try and find out. You could find another guard or another skill teacher easy enough.
Number of times the reporter said, Jesus, Sean, you gave him the wrong bottle, you know what I mean? Oh, sweet dog. Yeah, the early days when I was involved, you know, if things went wrong, I was, what would you expect? He's a hurler.
Yeah.
And then people forgot you were a hurler at all.
Oh, yeah.
What's the worrying thing, like listening to you and thinking about it from a non-Dublin point of view, is that this group are a young group. They seem like an unbelievably mature group. They have a manager who's still a young man and seems like a very driven man, and by all accounts is, you know, on the brink of winning a 5th All-Ireland in 6 years. It's just an incredible achievement. Like, the level of dominance that's there, and I'm not talking about the split in Dublin stuff or anything like that, but the level of dominance that it appears is there and is going to be there for some time to come is a concern for everybody, isn't it?
It's a concern for everybody, but the thing is this, that every kid in Dublin, they want to play football for Dublin. And you know, when Anthony Daly came in and what happened with the hurlers, every kid, you suddenly see hurlers all over the place again. And that's a natural involvement. And then because it gets such publicity today, sort of like with programs like your own, then with the television end of it as well, and the matches have been shown back, and then, you know, TG Carr made lawyers of it all, but the great games we had, and suddenly, you know, Jesus Christ, terrible, you know what I mean?
I've been watching some of them, including some of your teams over the last few weeks.
But like, that's all the more reason. You know, like, you take a group, you know, like that Tyrone group in 2003, or Kieran McGuinness's team in 2002. Nobody could convince them that they couldn't win. Yeah. You just knew that about them, you know? You just knew that about them. I remember Matty he centre forward for Galway. Matty McDonagh got good to him, and he was the only sort of con man to win 4 All-Irelands. And Ahmad missed the penalty. And I remember he said to him at half time, that's them finished. I said, no. I said, if they scored the penalty, I said Kerry would shut things down. And I said, but nobody will convince them. And Sharushin had an amazing game. You know, it's like, it happens in sport. Happens all the time.
I think everybody's going for a Dublin win, but not by much by all accounts from what I'm hearing. We were talking to Mossy a bit earlier on just about his own experience, Sean, at this point of the week in terms of being a player in the lead into an All-Ireland, whether it be club or county, and the sort of ticket rush, the requests that you get at various points. You 7 All-Irelands as a football manager and 4 of them victorious. What's your experience of a sort of a Friday before the Sunday?
Have you 2 weeks now to hope with the 3 we lost?
Clear the decks.
Yeah, it's funny, and even like the anti-climax when you get a draw. We had a draw twice, but the anti-climax, and because you've given everything, and to try and get the batteries sort of to get them back up there again. No, again, it's just try and keep things as normal as ever you can, and I was amazed when I stopped and I started going to matches when Adrian Barry took over from me and so on, and suddenly some of the things that the people were saying to Eamon, and I was saying to my kids very young at the time, and saying, were they saying things like that about me? Oh, worse that you see. And that's the way life is. But as you just keep it as normal as ever you can.
Would you? Mossy was saying he'd go into work and be happy enough to sort of occupy himself.
Better off in work.
Yeah, no, I think you can have too much time sitting at home. I would have tried to keep it as normal as possible and try and make sure. And now you might have kept the head down and tried not to interact with as many people as normal, but you certainly would have gone in and tried
Mossy,
to keep.
I remember after the famous match ourselves in Mayo in '96, right, the replay, and it was a bit of a shamaza, right? And but you know, it hit the radio all over the place, you know, but violence in sport and so on and so forth. But I remember saying to Tina, my wife, you know, well, let's get away from it all. She said, Sean, there's not another county that you can put your nose inside. We said, you hate everywhere you go. Yeah. And I remember, so right, we go to town, we go to Hoth, and because you can get lost to Dublin. Yeah. And the country is very difficult to get lost. It's nearly that bit more difficult. In Dublin, yeah. But you see, you also have the anxiety of your own supporters.
Sure.
So whereas Dublin people now accept that the lads will do the job, it used to happen with Kerry. You know, they never were under that pressure. I remember with Miko in '98 saying against Galway he'll never have experienced in Kerry what'll go on in Kildare. And the morning after the match in the semi-final, after they had beaten Kerry, I remember I was driving down to Kilkenny, but I went cross country through Rathcoffey and so on. Every ditch was covered with white sheets from Kildare, and that anxiety of your own supporters, that can soak you and that can drain you. So when your people, one of the lads with me back in '96, the morning of the All-Ireland, there were 60 people in his house. Sure, the chap his head was wrecked. You know what I mean? Now, and again, these are things people prepare for now, but it's only when you look back on it, this is how you learn.
The Limerick hurlers are probably in that space at the minute, aren't they?
Absolutely, and should look at lads.
Fair play to them.
Enjoy every single minute of it now. That's
would you have had that same level of sort of people coming in, because obviously you're a public facing job as well as everything else, with people in looking for tickets and sort of...
I never dealt with tickets.
Right.
You made that decision from day one.
Somebody else look after
it. From day one. And if you walked into the clinic at home, there's only a harp made by a prisoner during the famous 1991 series. A Dublin man made this harp for me. Right? And he fell in love with the Meath team, right? Yeah. And
he wasn't a real Dublin man, so
it was love. I'm not saying whether it was balls and arrows from the strings or whatever. But anyhow, I remember going in to see him afterwards, you know, and the man was gone home. He got released that morning, and he gone home. So I missed him, and it was an awful morning. And it was snow and sleet and everything else. And he robbed a car to go home and ended up back in again. You know what I mean?
No way.
Yeah. But like, I would have, like, there's a time and a place for everything. Like, I remember when Dara was born, it was 5 days before the All Ireland in '96, and I remember going to the Coombe, and the matron put me in the boot of the car to get me in because the word was out, and so they brought me in the back of the hospital.
Right.
And I thought this was brilliant, and then a few days later, when Tina and myself were coming out, she did the same to me. Went up to the ward to collect Dara, and all the nurses were from Mayo, and the child was all dressed in green and red, and my wife Tina knew nothing about football. Lord Jesus Christ, oh Lord, taking your son out with the Mayo colours, you know what I mean? But like it's all part.
That's a mad time, isn't it?
It's a mad time, but like, you know, there are people sick. There's some people, maybe the baby might have died or whatever, and it's that proportion is very important, and you just learn it. That's it. Yeah,
I'm surprised that, like, normally people would have, like Mossy says, sort of that rivalry between Meath and Dublin, you would have thought to put up a lot of barriers between people, but that actually there were people who were finding that it was breaking them down more than anything else in terms of the Dublin fan who's sending you in that harp. I'm surprised to hear that. Yeah.
Well, remember Cork and ourselves ended up on holidays together in the same place.
Right, by coincidence?
By coincidence, in '88, and Kieran Duff and Mick Kennedy and Shay Fahey were on holidays. They were buddies, and another chap from Kerry played, he's a pal of Shay Fahey's. The three lads, they were on holidays out there at the same time, and you know, there was nearly a divide between us. And Kieran Duff would
have needed protection from some of the Meath lads anyway.
All. Kieran said to the Cork lads, I'd be going out having points to them. No, what are they taking that we're not? What are they doing we're not doing? You know what I mean? Again, that's it. Yeah.
Will you go on Sunday?
Absolutely. Yeah. Good.
Good. And Dublin by a couple.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But anything can happen. I'm respecting a cracker now, I really am, yeah.
Well, needless to say, lots of love coming in for you. Been a pleasure chatting to you. We mentioned the charity cncf.org is the website to get along if people are interested. It's going to be a great afternoon.
A great afternoon, but it's just an amazing charity, you know what I mean? Yeah. Don't forget the sunshine, you know what I mean? Yeah. We all need it.
That's a lovely note to leave it on, Sean. Thanks a million for coming in. Been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. Thanks a lot for that. Cheers, thank you.
Mossy, so good to be with
Sean Boylan there in conversation with us.
It's like turning back the clock, lads. Thank you.
we'd all appreciate a bit of that, Sean. That's for sure. Right, we're going to move on. We've Alan Quinlan coming into studio very shortly. We're going to talk a little bit of rugby, it being the first weekend of the return of Guinness Pro 14, so all of that to come. But the Keith Andrews show is back. It's back into, I think it might have been week 4. It was yesterday's show. He sat down with Kevin Kilbane yesterday. They had a very interesting chat about Declan Rice and all things Ireland.
But ultimately, I be of the opinion, and I do feel strongly about it. I knew when I was called up for England when I was 18, 19, it was just a clear no. It was a no. I'm not English, sorry, but no, that's it. And I had Sam Allardyce breathing down my neck, putting me under pressure to play for England because of what it means to the club and financially to Preston at the time.
Did he put you under pressure? Because it's quite ironic that he's been coming out this week saying Rice should play for Ireland.
Sam had a pop, yeah. Sam
get 60 plus caps for Ireland. Yeah. When he might only get.
Yeah. In fairness to him, he stood down. He kicked me out of his office. Didn't want to talk to me. He made a big speech to us to say basically on the lines of, "This is the proudest moment in my career. I've never had one of my." Sam was coaching me from when I was 14, so Sam played a huge part in my development. So when I was called up for England, he saw it as a feather in his cap that he'd coached a player that has come through a system. And we were League 2 club as it is now, Division 3 at the time, bottom tier of English football. I was obviously starting to progress. So there's very few underage players that have come through Preston's system that have been selected to play for England. And I just said clearly no to him. No, Sam, sorry, that's... And anyway, it was over his desk and I thought he was going to headbutt me at one stage.
That would have been a powerful blow.
Yeah, it was, yeah. But and he kicked me out of the office. In fairness to him, he came down, he climbed down from it and we spoke later on. It was fine, but that's how I felt. I felt like, I said 10, I felt it my whole life.
Yeah, that was Kevin Kilbane on yesterday's Keith Andrews show. He also had a pop off me at some point, so I must have a word with him about that. He had some awful scandalous stuff to say to solicitors on the case, Mossy, about slanderous stuff, really.
Don't give anything away, Adrian. You might need it, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, keep it in the back pocket, as Sean would say. They also touched on the Irish in the Premier League, the Championship, plenty more as well. It's on the Football Show podcast. If you go along to iTunes or Stitcher or any of these podcast apps that you so engage with, and you'll find it there, the Football Show. That's the Keith Andrews Show. It's live every Thursday at 12:30. So we were talking a little football with Seán Boylan over the last little while and how things are going to go at the weekend. We're going to move on to the NFL because we've an Uber fan in studio with us this morning, and it ain't me. I'm going to get his thoughts in just a second. We do also have a new NFL show. News broke last night that the NFL owners attempt to, we're going to have to come back to that, Colin Kaepernick's collusion grievance was thrown out of court and that was unsuccessful. So we're going to watch how that story develops. Former NFL player, current BBC analyst Jason Bell was on with Ger on that NFL show, spoke about those anthem protests.
Are you concerned this year that, again, the players end up being political pawns and become victims of the political narrative outside, and that actually, you know, they end up losing status within their communities when really they should be being considered heroes?
You know, I've been in the locker room a long time, and one thing I love about my brothers in the locker room is we're a resilient bunch, and we stick together, and the organizations stick together because that's how you have to be successful. And I think that there's a lot going on in the United States that has nothing to do with football, and I think that football will be fine, players will be fine. They just need to continue to stay together and stand together because that's what makes teams work, and that's what makes build Super Bowl teams, and that's what guys are focused on. You know, I spoke about this last year, and it's easy to find, know how I feel, but I just think that that guys find a way, man, and guys stick together, and that's the beauty of this. Nothing will pull them apart. Guys will get through it as a team.
Yeah, you yourself and OC were unbelievably articulate about this when it happened last year. Did you get much support in the aftermath of that, or was there pushback from people?
It was a lot of support. You know, it was early on. The narrative hadn't been framed necessarily. So yeah, it was a lot of support. And, you know, just like anything, like I said before, it's like me and OT were in our locker room and, we figured it out together, just like these guys will in their locker rooms.
Yeah, that was Jason Bell in conversation with Ger on the brand new NFL show. It'll be coming your way every week here on Off the Ball. So that story last night, Mossy, just Colin Kaepernick, I know it's a story you've probably been following more closely than I have.
Yeah, it's been ongoing for a while now, and he's obviously he's a case put in against the NFL owners that they're colluding to stop him getting a job effectively, and he's obviously made a pretty public stance over in America in relation to you know, his protests, and he was the one that started the, you know, kneeling during the anthem. And to be honest with you, I think from a fan's point of view, or certainly from where I'd be coming from, his skill set and what he can do as a quarterback, he absolutely should be in the league. But a lot of these guys, is he good enough to start for a team? That's maybe questionable. Like he was the 49er starting quarterback, he lost that job, and he's had a couple of other opportunities, but he definitely should be in the league from a talent viewpoint. But a lot of these teams would look at it, and possibly the distraction it would bring, like, coaches might look at it from a distraction, but I think he's more saying owners are looking at it and they're blackballing him and saying, look, we're not bringing him in, we don't need the controversy that he brings. And again, when you see some of the guys that are getting opportunities to play, like quarterback's obviously an incredibly tough position, so to sit here and dismiss someone for playing it, but some guys don't do it to a particularly high level, and they're getting game time and they're
doesn't make any sense. It's somewhere along the track.
It's very hard to see. Yeah.
Well,
so
you've guys like Trump coming out obviously as well.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's so political now in America, and you know, all Trump has to do is put a tweet out about it, which he's done on numerous times in relation to this, and he's putting pressure on owners, and he's saying he wants guys fined and they shouldn't be allowed play, and it's unpatriotic if they don't do it, basically what he's saying to do. And I just think we've talked about, I think it was in a couple of weeks ago, and we were actually talking about LeBron James, and Owen was here, and I think Jared was here, and we were talking about the NBA, and the NBA just seems to be a little bit more clued in terms of their ownership and their league, in terms of how they're interacting with communities, and from a political level, and a couple of the top coaches are willing to come out and talk openly and honestly, whereas it's a bit, I won't say frustrating, but you see the likes of even Tom Brady or the Bob Kraft, who's the Patriots owner, they're all pretty close. It seems to be they have relationships with Trump and stuff like that, so it seems to be like they're all kind of watching their own house rather than actually maybe taking a viewpoint that might be better for society. Never
results in anything good.
No.
Jonathan on YouTube says very good from Mossy Quinn this morning. So I mean, YouTube, I'm not sure if you're aware, is a pretty interesting, let's say, place for commentary, so something positive there. I'll take that. We'll happily take that. Somebody else wondering about the Croke Park show last night, if it's available anywhere. It will be played out in a large chunk of it'll be played out on the show on News Talk tonight from 7 o'clock, so stay tuned for that. And I think we also have a plan to stream it out on Saturday evening as a bit of an alternative for Up for the Match, Mossy. That's, you know, I mean, some people are into
maybe I'd say most of Mayo will probably tune in and watch it anyway. There might be more of their level of interest in it.
It's funny, like things have even moved on obviously a touch since that in terms of some of the storylines. One story that we seem to have missed that I don't have from the Mirror today, I must have a look back, that and this might make a lot of sense actually, that the Mayo County Board at somewhere along the line have been in contact with Jacko O'Connor about the Mayo gig. John Mahon said to me at the end of the interview on Wednesday night that there might be a few Kerry names sort of half interested in coming up, and I didn't put two and two together at that point. I sort of assumed that Jack O'Connor was going to be the next Kerry manager.
Maybe, I suppose that's probably the question. If he is going to be the next Kerry manager, you'd imagine he's going to take that job in a heartbeat. I know he's done some good work with their minors and their under-21s over the last number of years, and he actually has an old club colleague of mine, Micheál O'Shea, who's a Kerry man, but Micheál would have played in Dublin for a couple of years when he was a school teacher, and he would have won a Club All-Ireland with Vincent's in 2008, and Micheál's been part of, he's a school teacher with Jack, and he's been part of that management team as well, and I know they've tried to progress, like I said, the minors and the 21s, but if Jack doesn't think he's going to get the Kerry gig, would he go up and take Mayo on? You know, but yeah, like you've obviously seen, like you see the likes of Paddy O'Shea, who you know, was steeped in Kerry history, and you know, he, you know, from a family point of view, and he was willing to come up and go to their county. So again, if Jack thinks, again, you talked about James Horan and the managerial time it takes to put into it, and there's obviously a big commute involved in that. But again, I think it's an interesting job in the sense that, like, even if you look at Stephen Rocher, people, you can debate whether Stephen did a good job or not, but when Stephen took the job 3 years ago, people were saying that was the end of that Mayo team, effectively. You know, James Horan had brought it as far as he could, and, you know, they would probably have to go through a bit of a rebuilding process, and yet he was in 2 All-Ireland finals in 3 years, and again, if anything, he brought it on again, and again, it seems to be a bit of the commentary is, you know, well, there's, okay, you've the likes Andy Moore and Keith Higgins and a couple of guys are getting on, but I still believe they've something to offer. I don't think you need to go in and have a massive clear out, and particularly if you're going to clear guys out, you need to have quality coming through, and they haven't really shown that in the last year or two. But maybe if a set of eyes from outside the county might be a good thing if there's no obvious candidate.
Like, he's been involved still, not at a senior level, but obviously at underage levels he's been involved.
Yeah, I think
he's still
exactly. I don't think I suppose, if you mentioned John Mahon seemed to be 10 years out of the inter-county game, and he's come back in and got a job. Like, Jacko Connor's definitely been, from a juvenile perspective in terms of coaching, I think he might have even been doing a little bit up in Kildare.
It was his son.
His son was playing in the Moorfield team. Moorfield went out of my head for a second, but with the Moorfield team this year, he had a son playing. I think his 2 sons are playing on it, and I think he was doing a bit of coaching with them in the background. So even from a club level, and obviously then from age grade with inter-county teams, he's obviously been doing a bit. So he'd certainly be well able to go back in, and Jack always strikes as a guy who's incredibly competitive and wants to go in and probably feels like he's something to prove.
The mileage would be good from Kerry up to, I mean, you know, not that GA managers get paid clearly, but the mileage at Strachan might be an
fair distance, all right. Yeah.
Paddy used to get a chopper, I think, certainly from Dublin. I think that was at the time when he used to. I think that he used to fly up to Dublin and maybe get either the car or the chopper, depending on what time training was at.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Well, possibly once or twice. Did he get it the whole time?
Look at. I mean, you know,
the story's better if he's in it 3 times a week. Yeah.
Michael O'Leary was obviously close at hand. You see, that was the clincher there. You know, some other stuff here. I'm not really seeing extraordinary skill in this year's championship, says Darren Doheney, which seems like an incredible catch-all generalisation.
It's probably there's probably snippets of it in terms of there's probably great scores, you know, individually great scores, but in terms of long periods of it, like the most entertaining game I was at this year by far and away was the Armagh Ross Common qualifier game down in Portlaoise. I think I was actually covering it for News Talk on a Saturday evening, and it was without question one of the best games I've seen in the last number of years from a pure brilliant scores, really open football, attacking 2 good teams at a similar level playing, and it was really, there was some of the skill sets on show that day were brilliant, you know, and it was there are probably, I suppose, the games in Croke Park in particular, you know, the Super 8s, there was 1 or 2. The fact that the final round came down to the way it did, and the Dublin and Tyrone game up in Omagh was entertaining, and obviously Kerry and Monaghan in round 2, both of those in round 2, but it didn't really lend itself to any classics. I don't think we've seen anything where you'd sit back and say, well, that was a 8, 9 out of 10 type of game, and I suppose that's the fear that if you go through the final on Sunday and if it doesn't get to that level, you've got a pretty average championship overall. MVP Paulie on YouTube says a rule like the backcourt rule in basketball could work for football. Once you cross the halfway line with the ball, you can't go back into your own half. Yeah, possibly. Again, there's a number of rules. Basketball probably, like, there's certainly a number of ones. The basketball ones like that. Again, they do an accumulative foul as well. So you have a certain number of team fouls, and then after that they go to the free throw line, and that kind of lends itself. There's a version of that, like what Sean was talking about, the international rules about bringing that free forward, and no matter where in the pitch, if it's a certain type of foul, it's brought, and it's basically a scoreable free. And backcourt rule. Again, I've seen suggestions of a shot clock rule possibly work in Croke Park, but again, if you have a certain amount of time to score. But again,
once you cross the halfway line, you can't go back. I mean, it might result in a lot of teams not that inclined to go past the halfway line.
Possibly, yeah, then they might end up playing in their own half. But the only thing is, it is riskier to play that possession game, and then it lends itself. Coaches then obviously have a look at it and say, well, okay, then there's no point dropping back into inside our 45, which is what they're doing at the moment. Let's drop as far as the halfway line and put a press on there, because if they do come out of their half, then we can go and swarm them, you know. So again, there's little tweaks, and I think there's an opportunity. You probably need to trial it in leagues, and there might be a bit of frustration. I remember years ago when I was playing, there was the sin bin, and when they were first bringing in yellow cards, all this type of stuff, and you have to see how how it works. Like something might feel like a really good rule on paper, yeah, but then when you actually look at it, there was a lot of people were questioning whether the mark was worth bringing in, and I don't think it's had. I think it's had a positive impact. Yeah, I don't think anyone would sit there now and say
positive neutral almost. Isn't
yeah,
it?
exactly. I don't think anyone would sit there and say, oh well, it has to go. Like it hasn't helped the game. So again, could you bring a forward mark in again if someone inside the 30 yards or whatever it might be, if he catches it cleanly, and that might reward them more kicking the ball into the inside line, which is pretty much gone out of it. Like it's very much a possession based game.
Might see a bit of it on Sunday.
You might see a bit of it on Sunday, yeah. So, but again, there is different rules like that you could look at.
Darragh O'Toole wonders. He says, "No SJW. Are you aware of SJW? Social Justice Warrior." I too had to sort of cast my eyes to the corner of the room last week to wonder what the hell this was about. No SJW jumper this morning. He wonders about me. Has Owen borrowed it for electric picnic? I was wearing just a regular sort of jumper last week, but we were talking about the arrival of the Pope and all things got out of hand, Mossy. So Darragh gave me loads of abuse, but he did win himself a couple of tickets for the Roadshow last night on the back of it. So
you're getting fashion tips as well as giving sports advice.
Everything going on here. Alan Quinlan is standing by. We're going to discuss the opening weekend of the rugby with him very shortly. Darren Cleary is in studio as well. I think you're exiting stage left, Mossy, are you? Is that right? You're leaving us?
It's time to go do some work.
Been a pleasure chatting to you. It's Dublin by a couple, it really is the essence of it.
I think so. I genuinely do believe it's going to be tighter than the 6 points. I think it is going to be close, and I think Dublin are going to have to produce a big performance. But I think when you look at the fitness levels, and I think for a team going for 4 in a row, they haven't one show, they haven't looked like a team that are fatigued or that are tired, and I think that's a testament to their coaching and to the work they've done. And I just see again, it's an old cliche, but the Dublin bench is going to be the difference, and I think they'll close the game out strongly in the last 10. But I do think it'll be a game coming into the last 10 minutes. Yeah.
Any tickets?
Of course. Where would you like them?
Thanks a million for coming in. Enjoy the game.
No problem.
Mossy Quinn there. Alan Quinlan standing by. Darren Cleary standing by to bring us up to speed with everything that's happening in the live sport as well. But while we were in Croke Park last night for our Bold Sports Roadshow, Charlie Redmond joined Richie in studio to give his take on the Dubs against Tyrone.
I agree with everything that Shamey said. They've improved more than anyone this year, from the game against Monaghan all the way through to where they are now. I thought they were sunk ship when they played against Donegal, when Donegal got the goal. I thought they were history, and they showed great character and great resilience to come back and snatch that game from Donegal. They're coming to Croke Park. They've got a great manager. We know he's one of the greatest managers ever to take to a football field, but we have one of the greatest teams, we believe, that ever take to a football field. But that's no guarantee of success, and there's nobody in Dublin, in this Dublin team, who are thinking anything other than the competition that is going to be there for Sunday. There's a few Dublin supporters out there that think this is a stroll. This is anything but a stroll. This is going to be a huge tactical battle, and Tyrone are going to make it very tactical. Dublin will have to be very patient, as Shamey just said, and pick their chances. What I do believe is that if Tyrone have to beat Dublin, Tyrone are going to have to get a couple of goals. And to get a couple of goals, they're going to have to commit more players forward than they have in some of the games. They seem to have this way of they play with Colm Kavanagh just in front of their full back line, and then they have Burns at centre back. But 15 minutes to go, Burns is generally taken away. Colm pushes out and to put another forward on, and they seem to want to win the game in the last 15 minutes. And you know what? It's been successful for them, and possibly that is the way. If they are to beat Dublin, that might be the way to do it. Do a snatch victory, be ahead at one stage only, which is when the final whistle is blown. And to that end, this team is exceptionally capable of doing that for Tyrone. But I just feel the Dublin team are just so good. They have a great bench to call upon if anyone's performance level drops. And when that happens and you get someone going off and it's either Costello or McMenamin or Macaulay or Brogan coming on, it must be disheartening for the opposition. And because of that, I think we'll scrape it. I hope we scrape it.
Right.
So people are talking. I've said it. I think we'll win by 4. I'll take 1.
Right. There you go. Richie McCormick's shirt, by the way. I mean, quite the deal there. OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Keep your comments coming into us. There's been plenty of them, including one here on that conversation was having Mossy. We're having about the backcourt rule in basketball potentially being something for Gaelic football. How does anyone, says Sheelan Strain on Twitter, how does anyone think that taking the ball back into your own half would encourage attacking football? All teams will just sit in their own half and wait to counter. Needs to be that you have to keep at least 4 outfield players in each half at any time. So keep your thoughts on that coming in. Mossy's gone home, and we've had 2 new guests in studio. Darren Cleary, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian.
Alan Quinlan, welcome back.
Good morning, Adrian. Thanks.
You got your best jumper on for this morning?
Absolutely, yeah.
Colours to the mast straight off the bat, really.
Absolutely,
is what I'm seeing.
Just for you, because you're a Munster fan.
I accept that, yeah. Well, you know.
There's no blue in the wardrobe either.
No.
As Quinny said to you there a couple of minutes ago, what old shite have you got for us?
Officials from Mayo have made an approach to Jacko. That's according to reports this morning about the vacant managerial position. The Kerry man seems to be a man in demand at the moment. He guided his county to 5 underage All-Ireland titles, 2 in 3 years with the minors, 2 with the under-21s and 1 with the under-20s. His senior success as well counts All-Ireland titles in 04, 06 and 09. He is in demand, as I mentioned, because he's been linked with the Eamon Fitzmaurice job after Fitzmaurice resigned at the end of the current campaign. Well, Mickey Hart is the first manager to show his hand for the All-Ireland football final. Tyrone have revealed their team for their showdown with Dublin at Croke Park. There's one change. Mark Bradley has been picked to start at corner forward, with Lee Brennan named among the substitutes. There's no place in the starting 15 for Conor Myler, who has to settle for a place on the bench. He has recovered though from the knee injury he sustained against Donegal in the Super 8s. Tyrone's Matty Donnelly selected at wing forward, and he says the strength of Dublin's bench means they will need to be smart in the way they conserve energy.
Both teams are extremely well conditioned. They obviously try to turn the other team over as much as possible, but a lot of that's going to come down to decision making too, and who has the ball, and offensively making the right decisions and making sure you're keeping the ball as much as you can, because you get turned over against the other team, they're up the other end in the blink of an eye, and that's extremely energy sapping.
Now, Dublin could name their team tonight, or it might be tomorrow afternoon. Jim Gavin, though, will be boosted by the news that Cian O'Sullivan should be fit to play in this clash. He has shaken off the hamstring injury suffered in the All-Ireland semi-final. O'Sullivan, just one of 3 Dublin players, along with Stephen Cluxton and James McCarthy, to have started all 5 of the final wins this decade for the boys in blue. He was forced off early. Jason Sherlock is the man who's often seen delivering messages on the field to Dublin players. Jim Gavin patrols the sideline. But is the secret to Dublin's success high up in the Hogan stand? The man who coaches the defence is perched there. He is Declan Darcy.
My role within the group would be defensive coach, but I would sit up in the stand after the warm-up on the pitch. I would go up there and I can feed down to Jim and Jason as to the information, and it works really well, because at times I think Jim probably would like to be up in the stand because you can see an awful lot in the stand, but I think it's a trust piece between the 3 of us, particularly on game day, that the 2 guys are on the pitch and I'm up watching and keeping eyes from a high and seeing, and that dynamic has worked for us well.
It's kind of interesting because you don't, from a GA point of view, like it's sort of crouch knee, looking around the pitch is generally the way the manager tends to be. Like Davy Fitzgerald used to do a small bit of an hurling for a time, if I remember rightly, but it just doesn't tend to be like that sort of rugby thing of being up in the, getting a good bird's eye view up in the stand doesn't really seem to happen in GA that much. Like, it would strike me as would be a smart thing to do.
It depends who you have pitch side. I think obviously with the rugby they're all mic'd up and guys.
It's the reverse, isn't it? Like, so
it is,
that's the defence coach up in the stand feeding down to the manager, and they would swap that almost to a degree in rugby.
Yeah, and I think particularly from a rugby point of view, I think you see a little bit more when you're up there and you can communicate the messages that are in, and there's a lot of variables and a lot of stuff going on in rugby matches and techniques, and you tend to see and plan opportunities, the ball, because on one side of the field you can see stuff on the other. So I'm surprised it doesn't happen more on GA. Traditionally you see the manager stand, particularly in hurling, like you see Brian Cody or Davy Fitz or Michael Ryan.
It's only going to take, like, if Jim Gavin starts doing it at some point, and it sounds like from what Declan Darcy is saying that he almost would want to be up there, Jim Gavin. If he starts doing it, everyone will just start into it.
Yeah, look, I don't know if it's something that they'll want to do. Maybe they feel a bit more attached to the whole game, being that close to it. But I couldn't imagine as a rugby coach, you know, if you were involved in a professional team, being down by the sideline.
A couple of them that do it still, isn't there? Some of the French guys, I think.
So the French, some of them do, but it depends. But I think you obviously.
Vez, was he was a guy that
a little bit more, yeah. You see way more up in the stand, to be honest, and you see the opportunities I'm talking about. You know, decisions that people make, opportunities where you should kick the ball and stuff like that. So you see that a bit more in rugby, but I'm surprised it doesn't happen in the GAA.
Yeah, a bit more, yeah. It'll be a fad, Quinny, I'm telling you. Jim Gavin starts doing
It'll change, yeah, exactly.
All change.
Everyone will start doing it. Meanwhile, the All-Ireland Ladies Football Champions Carnacon have been reinstated into the league and championship. They have successfully appealed to the Connacht Council. The Mayo County Board had decided to expel them after claiming they brought the association into disrepute when 8 players from the club withdrew from the panel citing player welfare issues. Cora Staunton was one of them, and she was speaking at last night's Off the Ball All-Ireland final preview show. She said, "We're a small rural club that's probably been punching above our weight for the last 2 decades, and maybe that's why we're being punished." Carnacon now free to play their Mayo, Connacht and All-Ireland titles and defend them as well. Well, the All-Ireland is the big talking point, but the big soccer match as well tonight. The Republic of Ireland gearing up to face Northern Ireland in the Women's World Cup qualifier. Only pride on the line, basically, as neither side will be able to reach the World Cup finals. Ireland can round off a positive campaign with a 3rd place finish in the group behind the Netherlands and Norway. Manager Colin Bell has been talking to Maura Trassany-Kelly about what he expects from the game, which kicks off tonight at 5:30 at the Tallaght Stadium.
I think it'll be a typical local derby, which is maybe even like a cup match atmosphere. It's going to be really tight and tough and hard. I think a very physical game, so we have to be prepared for that.
I assume, though, you're also looking at it with knowing that this campaign didn't go the way you wanted, near the way you wanted, and you're probably already looking with half an eye toward the next tournament.
Yeah, we want to round this campaign off with a success. If we were to beat Northern Ireland, we could say we've won 50% of our matches, which would be a good quota, I think, especially in the group that we had. So, and also we've been able to compete and hold our own with Norway and with Holland in both of the matches, which is again a positive. So the campaign has been positive. We want to round it off though now with a positive result. You know, get 3 points back onto the table, and then obviously move forward, and the whole preparation will be then towards the next Euros.
Dundalk hope to bounce back from Tuesday's defeat to Shamrock Rovers when they return to SSE Electricity League action later. The Lily Whites on the road to struggling Limerick. Cork City just 3 points behind them now ahead of their meeting with Sligo Rovers at Turner's Cross. Shamrock Rovers hope to heap more misery on struggling Bray Wanderers. Derry entertain Bows, and it's St Pat's away to 3rd place Waterford. While Brendan Rodgers is confident that Moussa Dembele will still be a Celtic player when the transfer window closes tonight. The Hoops boss speaking after a 3-0 win for them over Saduva saw them book their place in the group stages of the Europa League. Celtic rejected what was called a significant bid for Dembele, with Lyon having confirmed they were the one that tabled the bid for the 22-year-old. While Leinster have handed a debut to Joe Tamane for their Guinness Pro 14 opener against Cardiff later. The former Australian international starts at inside centre, and he's joined in midfield by Rory O'Loughlin. Ross Byrne will play at 10, while number 8 Quaylen Doris is set for his first start for the Blues in a side skippered by flanker Rhys Ruddock. Kick-off there, 7:35.
Good stuff, Darren. Thanks, Millie, for that. We are going to talk rugby with Quinny in just a couple of moments' time. But before all that, Bruce Buffer was on Off the Ball last night. You can watch the full video over on youtube.com/Off the Ball. Here he is on Conor McGregor.
You know, some people love him, some people hate him. And I do think what happened in Brooklyn earlier on this year has kind of swayed a little bit more in terms of public opinion against Conor McGregor. And that's kind of all around the world. And I'm not sure about you, but does it leave a little bit of a sour taste that the Brooklyn incident, the footage from that day in the Barclays Arena, is being used to promote this very fight?
You know, marketing minds at the UFC who put this stuff together, these promos and these commercials, there's a reason, a theory, a method to their madness, shall we say, as the term goes. Obviously, being a person of class and respect and everything that I lead my life with, it was very upsetting, that incident. And I went public and talked about it when I was asked by TMZ and such. What I'm hoping for is that, yeah, I mean, the UFC is going to do whatever they want to do to promote the fight. And the fact that you mentioned, too, that there's a split of fandom in Ireland a little bit since that incident with Conor, is, I gather, what you said?
Yes, yeah, even before that incident, to be honest with you, Bruce.
I think a lot of that maybe stemmed from the way Conor handled himself at the Mayweather press conferences, which started that feeling. Because I was hearing this from Irish fans.
No, you're right.
Travels. And then it culminated into the horrific incident at Barclays. He's paying his penance, shall we say.
Sure.
So now it's on to fight and everything else. Your question is about the promo being used. I was a little surprised, but, you know, again, you've got half the people that want to see Conor win. You've got the other half, let's say, that want to see him lose for the reasons that we're discussing or whatever reasons, which means that everybody's going to buy the pay-per-view. You know, that's the bottom line. I just hope that Conor being the great warrior that he is, having the incredible backstory that he has, which I was hoping would make him one of the greatest role models in history to the young people out there watching him and everything, handling himself in a proper fashion. Let's just hope that Conor learns whatever he needs to learn from the incident that took place and becomes a better and a greater role model as Conor McGregor, being the worldwide personality and popular personality is. You know, with fame comes responsibility and greatness. With greatness comes responsibility, as they say. Yeah. And that responsibility, I think, is to be a good role model for those of you watching. But Conor McGregor is going to be who he is, which is Conor McGregor. He's not going to be who he believes he is. He's going to stick to that mold. So I just hope he's learned from it and becomes an even better person than he already is the best way I can put it.
Are you a Conor McGregor man?
Sometimes. Some of his behaviour doesn't impress me, but you gotta. I give credit to the story and the journey he's come on and the success he's made.
It's a pity he just couldn't stop being an asshole, isn't it? Like, you can do all of those things and just not be an asshole.
Yeah. I'm sure he does some nice things behind the scenes, but we see a lot of
don't hear too much
stupid
of those.
stuff. One or two, but there's a lot of stupid stuff comes out. But look, it's some story.
Speaking of significant Irish sports media brands, Quinny, you're relaunching your own career.
I wouldn't say relaunching. It's I wouldn't look at it like that.
New season upon us, and
it's a new season. It's strange now because normally this time of year I'd be kicking off in the Pro 14. I'm not doing the Pro 14 this year with Air, Virgin Media. I'm going to be doing Champions Cup and Six Nations with them and exclusive with them and doing other features and other shows for Virgin Media. So. A little bit different, but it's exciting all the same. You know, it's just have to wait and be patient now for a few weeks to do the Champions Cup, and then the Six Nations comes around pretty quickly, and the success of it last year was brilliant for Virgin Media, and so I'm excited about that.
You can't mention TV3 anymore, can you? That's sort of
I think
part of the contract.
You know, the rebrand. No, it's not. It's not. It was TV3, yeah, but it's Virgin Media now. But it's different, you know. So I'm going to do some commentaries for Off the Ball and go to some games on Saturdays, and you know I write a piece for the Indo every week, so it'll give me a little bit of breathing space to come up with different stories and different narratives for matches and stuff that happens. It's just so much stuff happens the week of matches, and there's a lot of good stories there. So a little bit different, but I'm really excited, looking forward to the season, and you know, hopefully it'll be a good one.
There's a lot of reasons to be positive after a small bit of a rocky period, particularly for one of the provinces, an unbelievably rocky period for around the country. But reasons to be positive almost at varying degrees for all the provinces really heading into the season.
Yeah, I think so. Look, it'd probably take us a long time to go through them in depth, but Leinster, you know, they've only one kind of signing, Joe Tamani, 17 caps for Australia. He was with Montpellier, very powerful, strong, abrasive player, and he's probably, you know, replacing Nasewa. If you can replace someone that good, the impact he's made. But the strength and depth in the squad, you just look at Caelan Doris is playing tonight against Cardiff. He's a super player. Josh Murphy's another very good player in their back row, and they just keep kind of rolling out young players, which they don't have to go out to the market then go signing guys, and there's so much strength in that squad anyway, so they're probably the team to beat on both fronts. The worry maybe is that out half slot that, you know, Ross Byrne starts tonight.
It's an unbelievable opportunity for him now, the way it has been cleared.
He probably, in fairness, he played up in 20 games last year for Leinster at fly half, so he's a really good player, and Joe Schmidt brought him to Australia as well. Didn't get to play, unfortunately, but he's a very good player, and, you know, with Carberry leaving, that leaves him a little bit. His flexibility of being able to play at fly half or play at full back will be a little bit of a loss to him and to them. But look, they have so much strength and depth. I think it's probably going to be difficult for the Irish provinces for the first couple of weeks without their internationals. I think Cardiff are probably full strength. You know, I look at the Ospreys team. They're playing Edinburgh at the weekend as well. Very, very powerful side. All the Welsh guys are rested. The top Welsh guys are rested for their summer tour. You know, so the Irish internationals will be kind of filtered slowly back in the next couple of weeks.
On Leinster, while we're talking about it, and on that note, like, there's no Sexton tonight, and he's the club captain for the year, and, like, you know, the evidence is there that he doesn't tend to play a huge amount of those Pro 14 games anyway.
He's played 9 Pro 14 games in
over
2 years.
Something like that. So
it's phenomenal, yeah.
Rhys Ruddock's obviously captain, but I mean, looking even at the team to play Cardiff tonight, Rhys Ruddock is obviously the captain, and Fardy in terms of leadership, and after that there's not a huge amount. Like, it's an inexperienced team that doesn't look as if there's a huge amount of leadership there. Is that I mean, I don't know if we're grasping at straws here in terms of fallibility of Leinster this season, but would that be a concern?
A little bit, I think. When, you know, look, if they're very, very stretched, you know, particularly, and you know, you have to remember Leinster lost 6 games last year in the Pro 14, and you know, for Leo Cullen, when you're going on 2 fronts, it's important. He'll understand that there'll be a couple of games that you will lose. That's just the reality of it. It's getting him into that playoff position again, and when you bring back all these players, you're practically unbeatable at that level, and that's what they've got to try and do, massage their way through the season. And I think just for the Irish problems, the first couple of weeks can be tricky, as I said, and you don't want to fall too far behind. And look, they have a winning culture. Of course, they can go to Cardiff tonight and win. They still have a lot of guys who've you know, played a lot of games. But when on paper, like, yeah, you are kind of looking out for the big names. But Caelan Doris, as I said, he's someone who could, you know, have a real impact and a real step up.
Yeah, he's
and there's still enough about them, you know what I mean?
Him particularly, Quinn, he's like massive. He had played a little bit last season, he had injuries, but like a massive amount of excitement about this guy, and what he might be able to bring to that back row. Caelan Doris.
Yeah, absolutely. He's very athletic, powerful, quick, and a lot of promise with the guy. So he'll just have to. The amount of back rows they have is phenomenal. Yeah. So Max Deegan is someone as well who's
I think he comes on the bench. It was a shout between him and Deegan, I think.
Yeah. So look, they've loads of strength and depth, and look, I think they have that winning mentality. Contepomi's coming in with him. He'll add a new bit of impetus into the coaching setup there. So I think they'll be quite comfortable with what they have, and they still have a lot of good players in that team.
I mean, maybe all provinces are to a degree, but it strikes me it's particularly true at Leinster that they're Leo Cullen, Stuart Lancaster and the Felipe Contepomi now are essentially coaching 2 different teams there.
Yeah, that's the trick, and that's the price you pay for success on the international front. There's so many guys who are going to be away with Ireland and manage through that player welfare situation within the RFU. So it is a fact, yeah, that you're kind of going.
It's difficult, isn't it? Like trying to
two guys, but they've got to tell these guys every time they get a chance, it's an opportunity to kind of jump up themselves, and they'll be pretty screwed. It's the standard you set, and look, the standard they had last year was phenomenal, and they managed themselves through the season really well and peaked at the right times, and you know, as I said, if you get into playoff situations, then you have a surge of these guys coming back in, and they bring that winning mentality, and but they're very, very powerful. It's phenomenal, and I think Toomani will be a good signing for him.
Would you have had any in your grill time with Contepomi when he was here?
No, surprisingly, and that's a question I get asked a lot.
Would have thought.
Yeah, naturally you think, because
not making any judgments.
You know, I would have been abrasive when I played, and probably involved in plenty of kind of scuffles and stuff like that in matches, but never. I always got on pretty well with him, and never had an issue with him. And I think the time in 06 when Munster, that year in particular, there was a couple of things with Donica and Rog and Dennis Leamy, and you know, in some of the games throughout that season and that semi-final as well. So to be honest, and thankfully, I'd no issues with him. I never really seemed to pick and fly halves or have any rows with them. It was usually big forwards, stupidly. I should have never picked small wingers or anything like that.
Would you not? I always assumed that from a Munster point of view that you were discussing that internally and saying, let's nail this guy. Like,
no, I think, look, it's, and again, it's something that people would ask, do you target opposition players? Of course you do, to a point that, you know, Felipe was an incredible talent. What a player.
But if you could put him off, you try and put him off.
Yeah, if you get in his face, it's not even to frustrate him, to make him angry. It's to try and force mistakes, and you know, hope that he'll kind of run the ball out of his own 22, and that you'll force a knock on or a turnover or something like that. But he had the ability to cut you open as well, and so it was just putting pressure on him, and all teams do that. You know what I mean? When Rog played at fly half, the Argentinians targeted him all the time and tried to rattle him. So. Guys who play with that kind of passion as well, of course, that's just the nature of who they are and what they are. So it's, I think he'll bring a lot of energy into that group as well. I think he'll be a real good signing for him. And he's a real Leinster favourite as well, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting to see what he does with that back line as well. From Munster point of view, I mean, like, results haven't been overly encouraging necessarily from a pre-season point of view, but I know even with the Exeter game, was it last week?
Yeah, Exeter came full locked and loaded last week, and they have a very strong side. Munster, it's kind of two sides. I think the boost they'll have this year is obviously the signing of Joey Carberry, Tyg Byrne, Arno Botha, Mike Haley, from Sale. He's Irish qualified as well, and now they bring in Albie Matheson, who's, people have probably questioned that. Why are they bringing in another foreigner? I think they just haven't that strength and depth there. Conor Murray is going to be out for a number of months. He's the scrum half, is he? He's scrum half. He's five caps for the All Blacks. He was with Toulon and Bristol last year, but
early 30s. Sorry,
he's a very good player, very capable player. But obviously there hasn't been a big statement about what's up with Conor. He's going to be out for a couple of months, and you could be, particularly with Europe, you could be down the pecking order, lose a couple of matches, and to lose someone of his quality is a big blow to him, because he's such a great player. But to be able to bring in someone like that, and I think it kind of fills the gap a little bit, and they don't want to fall behind, particularly, as I said, in Europe. But there's a fair bit of excitement there. With that excitement comes expectation and pressure. So I think there's a bit of pressure on Munster to deliver this year, and maybe, like, to be fair to them, getting to the semi-final of Pro 14 in Europe last year, and the semi-final the year before in Europe as well. They achieved a fair amount. You got to give them credit for that.
A lot of people might not have expected that.
And with the injuries they had, you think of Chris Farrell last year and Jacko Taute, two big, powerful guys. Farrell was so good for Ireland at Six Nations. To lose those guys, and other injuries they've had as well. So there's a fair bit of optimism there and enthusiasm. But getting everyone fit and ready is the challenge for rugby squads. Every squad has a number of injuries, but if they get a little bit of luck and get all those guys in the field, they certainly have more depth.
We spoke about what kind of problem we were bringing to the back line at Leinster. It's not overly spoken about, and Felix Jones was a guy who, I mean, in loose dispatches was been spoken about in terms of the Connacht job when it's come up. Now, it might be a bit early in his career, but he has got, when everybody's fit and ready, and when the European games come around, like that Munster back line that you give or take a couple of positions in terms of who might start, looks class now, and like with somebody like Carberry at the helm there to drive it around, like I'm interested to see what Jones is going to bring to that backline this year.
Yeah, well, that's it. I think one of the probably criticisms last year was probably their catch pass and their timing and stuff like that. But it's like anything for Felix to come in and be involved, and they've been through a fair bit of adversity with Axel. With the change of Rassi, trying to build a team, pressure from outside. I think they'll have learned a lot, himself, Jerry Flannery, and the rest of the coaches there. Van Gran has got a good pre-season. He didn't really have a lot of time to change stuff up last year. Yeah. So I think they'll certainly have kind of found their feet now, and they'll be excited as well about having the options, because look, when you lose two top midfielders last year, it does hamper the whole situation, the back line, and when you think if you still have Rory Scannell, Sam Arnold, Jacko Taute, Chris Farrell, there's four really good centres that you can mix and match and change.
We had in Sweetenham, Conway, Carberry, Murray when he's fit, Earls.
Yeah, Mike Haley is pretty exciting with the ball in hand. I think someone to watch out for this year is Calvin Nash.
Right.
He's still very young. Played a couple of games in the last couple of seasons, but super exciting player. And he could have he's a winger. Right. He could have a real impact there as well. He played a number of games, so quick and strong with the ball in hand. And so they have options, and I think probably with the forward pack, in fairness, they compete and they mix and match, and they can be really aggressive with the ball, and they have a great intensity when they get on the front foot. but having more options and variation to their game and maybe executing a little bit better. You go back to that semi-final against Leinster last year in the RDS, and you know, they had a lot of kind of momentum in that game. It was a great time to get Leinster after winning the week before the Champions Cup, and you know, there was a bit of vulnerability there. And you just think the amount of possession and chances they had, they just a little bit of some timing issues, a bit of catch pass at times, and they lost that kind of. And you look back, I remember leaving that day saying, well, look, in fairness, they showed a lot of passion, desire, created opportunities, but just didn't take them. So you think if they're to go to the next level, you've got to take those opportunities and be. You look at the All Blacks; they're just the pinnacle of simplicity.
Simplicity, yeah.
It's not fancy.
It's the Dublin footballers as well.
It's just where you catch the ball, how you deliver to the guy, the timing, the way they run on. If someone makes a line break, there's a guy on his shoulder, inside and outside every time, and it's just having that anticipation. So I think that's probably the level they need to increase that level, the skill set, and just timing and execution in their backline. But certainly there's reasons to be optimistic.
Are you hearing anything about Tadhg Byrne's involvement?
Look, I think he's full of energy. He's an incredibly talented athlete, and he'll bring a lot to that team.
Does he have to change his game, do you think?
I don't think so. I think Johan van Graan does. The mistake in sport sometimes is you change someone's strengths and you try and work on their weaknesses, and you do things differently. Of course, all sports people are aware of their weaknesses. But you got to let Tadhg Byrne just play, and sometimes he's phenomenal with the ball in hand, and he covers so much ground. He's a real athlete and brilliant at the breakdown. So he's a real option from second row and back row, which is adds a little bit more something different, because there's a lot of a reliance on CJ Stander making a lot of carries for him, Jean Klein trucking the ball up, Niall Scannell, Reece Marshall making a lot of carries, Kilcoyne. Here's another variation of someone who actually, he can put really good footwork on the ball, and you can find him out in the wing and he can take on a back, and you saw that sidestep when he scored that try against Bath last year when it was a phenomenal try. So he has that ability. So when the game opens up, you think he'll make line breaks and he'll get on the end of stuff, and he's a great player.
Are they going to, is it too early in their, you've spoken about the sort of semi-finals and that sort of stuff, and the trajectory would seem to be headed in a positive direction, but too early to win a European Cup this season?
Yeah, maybe. It depends. Look, if they get everyone fit and ready, I think, and if they get their strongest team out for a quarter-final, semi-final, even a final if they get there, but it's going to be hard to manoeuvre your way through the pool stages. Exeter are very, very difficult. Cass won the top 14 last year. Gloucester, it's always a tricky place to go as well. So it's a tough group they're in. But if they were to get out and get a home quarter-final, which they're capable of, then you're in semi-final territory again, because I think it's very, very difficult to win at Thomond Park in a quarter-final, and so look,
it's too early.
It's too early. You got to see, and I think it'll take a little bit of time to get them all fit. There's still guys working their way back from injuries, and if they get a bit of luck and keep everyone fairly fit, they've a lot of options now. But you want your top players available for the big games, and invariably that's what happens when you win things, that you get that bit of luck with the injuries.
Quinny, that is it from us. Enjoy the season.
I will. We'll
anything?
Well, I'm very, very quickly. Connacht, they brought in a number of players. Andy Friend, new coach. I think a shot of enthusiasm after, Kieran Keane didn't work out from. Kyle Goodwin's a very good player. Copeland there, someone who could go and play really well. Colby Fainga.
Consistency with Copeland is the thing, isn't that?
That's it, yeah. So they have some very good players they brought in, and of course Ulster then, the perennial underachievers.
What do you think of that? I mean, they've obviously some new.
Well, I think Jordy Murphy, Marty Moore going there will really help. Jordy Murphy is a great player. Marty Moore obviously went to Wasps, and he comes back from there.
They've lost a lot of leadership and experience as well.
Yeah, they have. But look, Will Addison's a very good player as well. He trained with Ireland in Australia in the summer, so there's a bit of pressure there, and I think they've certainly underachieved in the last number of years. And Dan McFarlane coming in, he's come in late, but at least they have him in now before the season starts.
Not as late as it might have been, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think, look, for a team like Ulster, they've got to be getting to knockout stages of Europe, and they've got to be knocking on the door for Pro 14 as well, you know. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes this year.
You'll drop into us again sometime
for
soon
sure,
with a blue jumper on you the next time. Is that
I'll try
that
for
the deal,
you,
is
just
it?
for you, yeah.
Quinny, thanks a million.
Pleasure.
Enjoy your weekend. That is pretty much it from us for this morning. You can check out all the best bits back on offtheball.com over the course of today. We'll also be bringing you much more from the Roadshow at Croke Park last night, so keep an eye on all of that good stuff. From 7 o'clock tonight on the radio, it's going to be the crappy quiz is going to be back. So can I regain my crown is really the big question there. Tommy thinks not. I think it's high probability. Tommy, I'm not going to lie to you. Friday night racing, Johnny and Ger are going to talk you through all of that. OTB, Croke Park, so we're going to bring you some of that. There's an invite for the quiz going, I think, Quinny, if you're for the crappy quiz, if you're hanging around.
I'd love to.
What time are we doing that at, Tommy? You don't have to do it this week. 11 o'clock if you want to hang around.
Oh, no,
I know you're. I understand the schedule is busy.
I have to renew my driving license this morning, so I'm off to do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have an appointment.
I've done it in the last couple of months. It's a pain in the arse of a process, but look, you've booked an appointment, so that you've already.
I'm booked in.
So well done on that. Plenty across off the ball over the weekend for you. We're going to be talking Premier League, obviously Premier League live on Today FM from 2 o'clock tomorrow. Off the ball of Watford against Spurs. That game is live on Sunday. All the build up as well and coverage, of course, of the All-Ireland football final that you're going to need. Anthony Moyles is going to be at Croke Park for us on Sunday. And keep an eye as well. Subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube channels for some special shows over the next couple of days. OTB AM is back live from Monday morning from 7:45. From me until then, good luck.
OTB AM. Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.